Wolf6 actual podcast here. This is Dustin. Wolf6. We haven't done one of these podcasts in a few months, actually a while. We kind of ended off with our community conversations back during September and just kind of celebrating our community. And we're kicking it back off. We're just going to do the same thing. I had a lot of fun with it, and a lot of people had a lot of fun with it. So that's what we are doing. We got on today Cheekster, and yeah, we're gonna dig right into it. So thanks so much for tuning in, and here we go. All right, man. What is up? How are you doing today?
Not too bad, not too shabby. How about you? How's work?
Work is long. This has just been a brutal day. It's been a really brutal day for work. Normally, yeah.
I figured when WTV didn't go live that it might have been a bit too busy of a day for work.
Yeah, I think I just have to slate it for like Wednesday because I know tomorrow is gonna be a living hell, and I've got this stuff queued up, and I won't have to do anything with it, but it's day one. I just want to make sure I'm like able to troubleshoot stuff if things come up, and I'm sure like placement of browsers and all sorts of stuff on my computer. So we're looking at Wednesday or Thursday for getting it live. But
Shut up, Hammett. Shut up, Hammett. No one asked you.
Is that what you're playing? Are you playing Legends of Runeterra right now? Runeterra? I don't know how you say that.
Yeah, Runeterra. It's like the league card game.
Oh, it's a league card game. Okay,
I was playing
okay.
it while I was waiting for you. I was like, I don't know if he's.
Are you winning?
I was just like in the game. Yes.
This man is a gaming god. Cheekster is a gaming god. He's on a podcast and playing video games at the same time. Absolute legend. Is it like a ranked? Is it like a ranked match, or is it just like?
Yeah, that's why I would have just quit otherwise.
Oh man, man's playing ranked right now, and on a podcast. Gaming god. Cheekster, introduce yourself to everyone in the world and whatnot. Who is Cheekster?
Cheekster. I mean, shit. That's a that is a question. Like me on this platform or me as a person? Because shit, those are two different things.
I don't care about you on the platform. I care about you as a person.
You mean
I say that respectfully. I say that with utmost respect, but because part of who you are is the only thing that really matters, right? Because
yeah.
And it's also not like you're doing Dr. Disrespect, right? I've watched I hang out in your streams, right? It's not like you're like a complete other persona of who you are. So, yeah.
Correct.
So, like, where are you from?
Name's Cheekster. I'm from New Zealand. Father's from the States. So I was raised here, conceived over there. School was pretty much just a normal high school life for anyone, I would say.
Do you what do you do for work, right? Do you do anything for work right now?
I'm studying right now.
You're studying right now? What are you studying for?
Yeah. Cybersecurity.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, doing cybersecurity studies. I got that on scholarship before COVID hit. That's really, yeah.
How is that going for you right now?
I could be going better, but thankfully it's not like time restricted. So
are you enjoying it?
Some parts of it, other parts of it are fucking headache.
That's pretty fair. I just feel like cybersecurity is like it's this weird industry that has like a very sexy wrapping around it, but then the innards of it are not sexy. There's nothing, right? But you're like cybersecurity. It's like, oh man, I'm gonna know how to hack, and I'm gonna stop hackers.
People think you're fucking drumming mallet, when in reality you're some ordinary gaming.
Right, but that's why it's like you're gonna stop a nuclear meltdown from a hacker, and like you're like the good, you're like the guy that is a form of Neo, like I just feel like again cybersecurity just has this like
And when girls ask you what your job is, and you tell them your job is penetration tester.
Yeah, and then they also think you're like super wealthy, probably because like
I mean,
cybersecurity.
fuck, it does pay pretty well. To be fair, like
Yeah.
even starting salary sites are like pretty fucking good.
So you started this right at the beginning of COVID,
I got
or
the scholarship as COVID. Just before, like literally COVID.
how
So
how has it been for you with COVID? Because New Zealand was pretty strict in terms of like super shutdowns, um, not a lot of
I mean,
travel.
my music helped. Okay. But,
Oh,
yeah.
you're kind of cutting out there for a little bit there.
Couldn't get back to the gym. So my routine was like 50 yards. Keep my good health, my faith, my help me keep on top of that stuff and everything else. And when you don't have to be up for anything because you're locked in for um, day to get the biggest. You know what I mean? Like, why get up for why get up for why get out of bed when you don't have to get out of bed for anything? There's nothing you need to get out of bed for. You don't need to get up for the gym. You don't need to get up for anything else. So my routine just switched down the fucking tube. Um, and it kind of derailed me a bit to be straight up. Yeah, it was it was a pain in the ass. Let's just say that.
Um, how? So what was like normal routine? Like you mentioned gym. Like, are you like an everyday person or like every other day? Like,
I was an everyday person, and now I'm fuck, here and there for maybe once a week, every day. Oh, I was looking to fight every day at least. For the seconds, I think it's usually 5.
um, have things like is everything like completely opened up now over there, or like what's the general like?
Oh yeah. Basically, uh,
Hold on a second, it's cutting out really bad. I'm gonna try disconnecting and connecting back in. Um, give me a second, everyone. Sorry about this. Video quality, optimal performance. Okay, that should be good. Okay, let me try getting back in here. Sorry about that.
do you,
It was
do you want to take this to a call? So
no.
it's just P2P.
Um, we could try that. Hold on.
Because we're on a US server right now.
Okay. Yeah, let's take it to a call. Let's take it to a call.
Easy. How are we now?
Better, better. Yeah, I did a bunch of setting changes too. I don't even know if mine was optimized. Like changed some bit rate and some stuff, but this sounds already, I think, better. Cool. Give me 1 second to redo this, but um, let me window. Perfect. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I figured it happens with Discord, people servers in other parts of the world
Yeah,
generally.
I didn't. You live in such a bubble, I think, being in NA that it's just because, like, even if it's like Europe, it's not a big deal. So,
Mm.
yeah, live in a
Oh no,
bubble.
it's just the fucking cable that runs under the Pacific's pretty dog shit. So
Yeah. So, okay, so things are kind of back to normal. Like, what personally, like, I think a lot of the general consensus we've all missed out on like 2 years. What's like? Are you jonesing to travel? Are you like just looking to hunker down and finish up this school, or like what are you looking forward to, and like what kind of like got you through being pretty fucking isolated on an island during all
I
this?
mean, fucking Twitch and gaming just kept me through. That's 100% for sure. Um, So that was the interact that filled the social interaction and time consumption that and stimulation that I needed in that regard. In terms of what I want to do, see, I'm not too sure at this point. So like I have lost the gusto for the study.
Yeah.
I could finish it, but it's like I'm back to where I was like I'm like I don't know what I want to do with life at this point and where to go. Um, yeah,
Do,
like
do you think you'd be able to
yeah.
power through at least just to like have that under your belt in case you
Oh,
like had to have something to fall back on or like
oh, for sure. I mean, for sure I could. Like, I can already fall back on the stuff that I've already done. So the CompTIA, it's all CompTIA stuff. So
okay.
um, it's good internationally, and I can fall off. But like, even if it means falling back on the network stuff, as mundane and horrible as networking is, um, I can still fall back on that.
So what do
But
you want?
yeah,
What are you leaning towards? You know, you had kind of a couple years and like again, you started something in COVID and it was probably just nice to have like a distraction of like, okay, I need to put my
yeah.
energy into something. But like, yeah, now that you're back at the gym and you're probably going out a little bit, going to the bars a little bit or going
No,
out
I
for dinner.
still don't drink. Hey,
Still
still
don't
don't
drink.
drink. I
Okay.
gave up drinking for my mental health, so I
When
don't
did you do
drink.
that? I didn't know you did that.
Uh it was like nearly 3 years ago now. I think I've
Okay,
had
so
like two pints with two separate meals on two separate occasions, but I've never drank for the sake of drinking.
I think that's
So,
you know, I respect that in a like one if you don't like if drinking is bad for you, like
I mean,
congrats,
it's
like
bad for
that's tough.
everyone. It's
Well,
bad for
it's
everyone,
bad for
but
everyone, but especially if addiction or other factors are involved. You know, there's that's good, but it's also I guess kind of cool to be able to just flip on the switch really quick if again you were with a friend or with family or something and was out eating. You're like, yeah, I'll just have like one, you know, and you have that control to just like have a pint and that's it.
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's for the like. I feel a lot better. I felt a lot better psychologically after doing it as well. Just in terms of my mental health picked up quite a bit with the drinking. Like you're not in a cycle. For those of you who know what it's like you drink as a you drink as a it's like self medication,
Yeah.
and then it just causes that downward spiral of like
Yeah, it's a
you drink.
depressant. Yeah,
It's a depressant, so it fucks your mental health. So you feel sad, so you drink more, and then it's just a cycle of
yeah,
drinking.
yeah, yeah.
So if you just rather than rather than just not drinking, but then not addressing the underlying issues and falling back off the wagon again, like it happened in the past, it was a matter of also addressing the underlying issues. And in my case, it's simply after my head injury, I'm now suffer from depression, so drinking is a fucking no go. So just it's just not good for my mental health. Period.
Yeah,
So
I get that.
so can't. And then with that, um, after about a month, when the cravings wore off, it was just easy to not drink because I felt happier. So and I enjoyed feeling happier, so it was just easy from
Yeah,
there.
and that's like if you were I don't know how much you were drinking, but like even one even if it was, you were just a weekend warrior, you just get so thrashed, man. It's like if you were like drinking, it's just like
Oh, that's all we are here is fucking weekend warriors,
yeah,
except for the real bad ones. There are a couple that have beers after work, but it's like most of the people here are fucking, if they're drinkers, that's Thursday, Friday, Saturday,
right,
sometimes Sunday,
right.
just fucking out getting absolutely fucking smashed.
And like you're all dehydrated, you're hungover. It's just like when you don't have that and you've getting past that, like that you said, the cravings point, you just kind of feel pretty good about yourself. It's just kind of like, oh man, nice. Like I woke up and like I didn't have a
You just feel
hangover or
You feel better. Your bank account's more full. You don't
yeah,
have a hangover. Your mental health's better. You don't just feel a bit more depressed because of the alcohol.
yeah,
Like you just you look at it and then you see drunk people and you think, I can't believe I was fucking. Like you see drunk people sober and you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, what is this?
right,
Why do
right.
people choose to become this?
Yeah, yeah, especially if it's one of the more inebriated people where they're like either tripping over themselves or like doing some real dumb shit
Saying
at the bar or
dumb
the
shit,
club.
falling
Yeah.
over
Yeah,
themselves, like
just
picking
yeah.
fights or
Yeah.
whatever. It's just like, why would you spend your money to go be a fuckwit?
Yeah. I
Like,
get that.
it's so.
Yeah. Yeah. I've never I've had at certain points in my life I was weekend warrior, but like I don't know, like now I drink maybe a couple times a month and it's pretty much like 2 drinks. Like that's usually about it. Like I went out the other night with a old friend of mine and it was like we had 2 drinks at the bar. I came back here and I had one more drink. And it was
Yeah,
like, okay. That's good. So it's like when I'm drinking now, it's actually very difficult for me to get drunk because I have to go like shots or it's like a very fine line, right? Of like I have to have enough alcohol, and then pretty much if I've had that alcohol, it's like, oh man, like tomorrow's gonna be rough, basically. So I think it's a couple for taste. I usually get a couple cocktails, usually probably a little bit more fruity or something. So it's like, oh, it's a good flavor, it's a nice beverage, and like that's where it pretty much ends for me most of the time nowadays.
I mean that's in the times that I would drink. It's just like that would be it. Like, and I'm not just gonna drink for the sake of it. It's like if like the 2 times I have drunk, once was for my sister's engagement party, and the other was yeah like 1 pint before Christmas of like 2020. Um, with like
Hey Jess.
just that was after we just initially came out of lockdowns and all that crap.
Yeah.
It was just like a Christmas dinner at a restaurant, and I'd set a pint, and those so it's like I've
A
never.
nice celebratory pie of like, oh shit, like I can
It's just I
be
was having a
yeah.
burger. I was having a burger and fries, and I'm like, a fucking beer would be really good with this right
Yeah.
now. So I just got a beer, and I
That's
was
cool.
like, yeah.
And again, that's
I
I
was like,
having
and it's
that
like, yeah,
moderation ability is for the occasion. For instance, your sister's
yeah,
engagement party. It's nice to be able to turn it on for a beverage to cheers and everything and you know,
yeah,
people are
like yeah,
inherently weird too. It's like especially when it comes to drinking, it's like if you say it's like it's almost weird in a sense that I feel like depending who you're around and especially depending family, it's almost weirder if you got like you get less of a weird look if you are super hammered versus not having a drink. Do you
oh for
like
sure.
right? It's like it's this weird culture about drinking, and it's like I'm not saying every family is like this, but I feel like depending the
It's like
family, you could have that like uncle or aunt or like someone in the family who's like, "Yo, why aren't you having a drink?" And you get a little bit more shit versus even if you were super placid, like, "Oh, they're just having a good time." Like it's
yeah,
kind of the opposite of almost how it should be when it comes to drinking.
yeah. It's so my thankfully my family is not that case. You get plastered at a fucking family do like. I mean, we won't hold it against you, but
Right,
it's not the ideal outcome of
right,
the situation. Um, but like I noticed after I stopped drinking socially how much of my friendships were based on drinking.
sure,
It's like when you stop drinking, you realize which friends are friends and which friends are drinking buddies,
yeah,
and you realize that pretty quickly. And it's just a matter of like being able and being ready to just find new circles in
yeah.
that regard. Because if you don't, then you're just going to fall back into the same patterns as before.
When you guys would go drink, would you go to the pub or like would you go to like a nightclub or like a lounge? Like was music involved? Was other things involved, or is it mostly like, hey, let's just go get hammered on a Saturday night?
It was it was all sorts. We'd hop from a pub to like a club to a titty bar to the casino to like we'd just hop around more or less. Um, so like yeah, so like casino was always the end because casinos was 24/7 has 24/7 licensing.
Right, right.
So yeah, so they can. It's like after everything's shut, um, yeah, you can always go to the casino at like 5, 6, 7 in the morning and still get a drink.
Which you know, what's funny about almost all those places you mentioned, it is so different doing that if you're not drinking. Like going to a casino to actually be there at like 5 to 7. Well, one, being up that long without drinking is already brutal. Like that sounds miserable to me. But all those different stops, it's a very different experience if you weren't drinking all along the way, basically.
I mean, the titty bar's not too bad because
That's fun. Yeah, that's
I know
yeah.
I it's fun and I know a bunch of them anyway outside of work. So it's like we can just shoot the shit, talk about chat. Fucking, there's decks of cards everywhere, so we'll just be like in the cigar lounge, just smoking, vaping, and
That's
playing
cool.
cards.
Yeah.
If it's depending on other nighters, and when they need to go work, they go work. So it's chill, and then it's just look after the guys, and also you get less fights in a titty bar. People are less interested in getting drunk and picking
The
fights in a
fuck
fucking
you?
titty bar.
How many fights have you been? Like, is that like a really common occurrence? Like going out, like were there brawls happening frequently?
I mean, it's fucking always brawls happening, but
Really?
not my fault.
Yeah.
Usually it would
No.
be people
It's
I'm
just
with. It's people I'm with. It's people I'm with
yeah.
who there were a few of them that were really easy to set off when they were pissed. Um, and one of them, like the only when him and him would go out, we would actually literally only go to the casino and the strip club because it got
Because
to the point where it
otherwise
was like
there'd be blows going.
yeah, it would be people spilling. Someone would spill his drink or spill their drink on
Bump
him or
into them because
whatever.
you're in a packed bar and you
Because you're in a
accidentally.
busy bar and everyone's bopped, and
Yeah.
it would just kick off really fucking easily.
What's
Um,
the culture like? Are you getting arrested? Like, are you getting thrown into jail for the night or anything if you get into a fight? Or like,
oh
what's
fuck
the?
yeah, oh fuck yeah, oh
Okay,
hell yeah,
okay,
no doubt, no doubt. And
okay,
depending on the case, and more often than not, you're going to get slapped with charges.
okay.
Because unlike in the United States, in the New Zealand, the police can press charges without a person saying so. So, provided they have the evidence, you could literally not provide any testimony or any pictures, but if there's enough evidence to convict, they can still charge if they want. Um,
Yeah, that for fights that usually, especially a bar fight, that's pretty part of course. I think of like you're gonna get at least like being indecent in public, and then let alone like if you did actually punch someone, like that could be
like
assault charges and stuff
even
like
if you
that.
take it to a back alley or whatever, and it only
Yeah,
gets caught on the camera
I
there,
just
but your
feel
face,
yeah,
it's a thing of you fucking KOing a guy in an alleyway. They can still charge if they want. Police can just get that footage and press charges. So
well, I'm
whereas, like, I believe in the United States, it's not. It's a case of whether someone's going to press charges. No, the victim has to choose whether to press charges, and if they don't, the police can't chase it.
that's for like assault or anything, but if they were like drunk and disorderly in public, that would be the charge. Like you could get charged for that. So
Oh yeah, you'll get charged for that here regardless. But the police
yeah,
can press assault charges if they want.
yeah.
The police can
That is the
they can
difference.
they can they can press you with assault charges without someone filing anything if they want. They can prove it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, normally you have to do kind of some kind of destruction, I think, to a business or something along those lines. Otherwise, I think for the most part, yeah, usually the other person has to want to pursue something. And I'm sure there are cases where that's not the case, but I think if the other person was adamant of not pressing charges or doing anything, I think a lot of the times the cops would just be like, okay, fine, like we're not going to spend time on this, basically.
Yeah.
Um, I, w- I'm sure I'm wrong at some capacity, but I feel like that is the general consensus. Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, it happens, but it's like it doesn't have like, yeah, it's a little bit more even in a fight that both were to agree to go have throw hands, still like the risk is still there. So it's not like a case of where you choose to throw hands, you both, even if you both just fucking hug it out afterwards and walk away, still like the police can press charges if they want.
Right.
So
Right.
it's like it's a lot less. There's a lot more risk to it, and the ones that are normally scrapping are either gang affiliated or habitual
Right.
fucking
And that's one reason why they're gonna press
habitual.
charges.
They're
Yeah.
they're habitual in and out of court constantly on assault charges
Yeah. Yeah. That makes
because
sense.
of drunk fights. And
Um.
there are those that like you'll see it where it's like people will either like have none, they might have maybe one, or they'll have none, and then there'll be those with like fucking 12, 13 appearances in court
Yeah. I get that.
on assault charges for fights. And it's like they'll do it, they'll get to the point where they'll just do their 3 month, but a 6 month stint in prison for after a biff and then get out and do the same shit again.
Um. Do you? How big is like the town or city that you live in, or whatnot?
City's like 350,000.
Oh, that's pretty big. That's actually a really pretty big city. Okay.
I think
Cool.
it's like almost 400 now. It dropped after the earthquakes, um, but yeah, it's picked back up again.
Do you see yourself living there? Is this like where you want to live for the rest of your life?
I don't know. See, see, to to my attachment to places is not really based on the place itself. Um, I could live anywhere provided the reasons for living there are good. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
it's um, people and experiences and memories and that sort of shit that makes me attached to some place, as opposed to the city itself. So it's like if my family was to up and move somewhere, like like if all of my family was to up and move somewhere else, I would have some sentiment because I've lived here for so long. But again, it wouldn't be like it wouldn't bother me that much. Um, in that regard, like I could move to another country and not feel too bad about it. Like it's just yeah, my attachment to places is yeah not solely based on the place itself, but rather what's there.
That's fair. That's pretty cool. Um. s-
So it's kind of like, do I see myself? Do I want to live here for the rest of my life? It's like I couldn't answer that question. It's like, yeah, I, I could happily live here the rest of my life,
yeah.
or I could move away next year, and I'd still be happy. It's like whatever I'm happiest doing. So it's like, yeah,
I get that. I get that. Yeah. Having moved from home, that's kind of was like, I mean, I'm still really close to my parents, so I'm only like a couple hour flight, but like, I, I get that. I'm.
everything a couple of hour flight to the United States.
What's that?
Isn't everything like a couple of hour flight when you live in Texas?
Actually, yeah, being in Texas, that's one upside is like because you're so middle. Granted, I'm in the south part of it, but yeah, basically, even if you have to go corner to corner, it's not bad at all.
Only thing that would be yeah better would be like Denver. But
Yeah, Denver's like kind of like almost pure central right there, pure dead middle of it all right there.
it's the central hub for most of the domestic flights in the United States as well, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of carriers have at least it as like a hub. Certain airlines have done it bigger with it with Denver, but yeah, it's a big airport and it's definitely a hub. Unfortunately, it's not as central of a hub as like it should be. Um, but hopefully over time, like U.S. air
I mean, how
travel is
necessary? I
fucked.
mean, how necessary is it though, realistically?
to have a hub. It's
Like,
not. They just do it for cost savings. It's really actually
yeah,
it's stupid.
like
There's a lot of
like
times
having a central hub in the United States at this point in time. Like, it's not like we're
it only creates
something that's
operations way
one.
worse. Yeah. So like the
Yeah,
problem is it
when,
fucks operations, and so if like because if one flight is late, you have this massive chain of flights late, or if a storm hits your hub city, everything is just absolutely derailed. But the
just go direct though, no, from major centers.
and that's the problem is a lot of flights now don't go direct. And so you could actually, and again, when we think of like travel, we think about the environment, we think about financial impact, like all across the board for these companies. There are times where I'll be going west, but I'll have to fly east to Atlanta because that's the main Delta hub. And then I go west. It's so ass backwards and time wasted as well. And there was one time where that happened where I had to go to, I think I was going even more, like slightly east, but mostly north. But then they took me way east and south to Atlanta, and there was a massive storm that hit. So all flights going in and out of Atlanta were just screwed. And it was like, yeah, because they had a storm. So like they grounded planes for like 3 or 4 hours. No one could get in or out or anything. And it's just that's the other really downside of just not direct flights. Um and then like there's a lot of places, even big cities and stuff, there's not even like a direct flight to it or whatnot.
Oh, even yes, they'll just like travel to a hub city
Yeah.
and then they'll like it.
And then yeah, you'll go there. So it's like another big hub for Delta is like Salt Lake City. So it's like even though you're just trying to go to California or like Los Angeles, it's like, oh, we'll send you to Salt Lake first and then over. And it's just like again, you're going out of the way that wastes more fuel, that is like worse for everything and everyone. And then it's like you have to cut over to Los Angeles. So yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that needs to be fixed with U.S. air travel at least.
I mean, it's the same here, isn't it? For, like major places. Or, there's a lot of it. But
Um, hold on, it's cutting out again. I'm gonna try actually disconnecting and reconnect.
you have to recrop.
Nope, we're good. It does it. We're good. Once I do it once, set to this like window, it just kind of recreates the window, so we're good.
I mean, it is what it is. But we're just off on a tangent. Start off with life, talk about fucking
Travel. I know. What? I don't.
the state of the airline industry in the United States 2022.
I feel like one, it's very us of anytime we talk, but that's the thing is I don't like to have like something set in stone, of like, oh, I want to talk about this or that. For any of these conversations, I've never like set an agenda. I I think it takes away from the whole point's getting to know you, Cheekster. It's getting
Fair enough.
to get to know
Fair.
you. And I feel like that's a pretty accurate representation of just us talking about how fucked the airline industry is, and especially from a point of view of the global environment to the global economy. It's something that in our lifetime will definitely change because between those two things, I don't really see it being sustainable. And as like travel tickets go up, I think less people are gonna fly.
I mean, but the thing is ticket prices still aren't really going up too much, are they? Like,
They are
hasn't
now, but I think that's
hasn't
more
the
based off
airline
fuel. Yeah, it's based off of fuel,
hasn't
I
the
think.
hasn't the fucking airline industry like isn't more of their business doing other financial things that aren't related to carrying people at all? Like they do a whole bunch of other stuff to to make their money as
I,
opposed to travel and flights?
I don't know actually. That I don't know. I would not be surprised. I feel like that is any American corporation. They're like, we do
It's
this
like
thing, and
it's
then
like
you look at
Musk
their
with
balance
it's like
sheets.
Musk with fucking Tesla. Look at his balance sheets, and it's like I'm pretty sure they made more money investing in like crypto and shit as a company than
Right.
actually selling cars. So it's like, at that point, are they still a car man? Are they still a car company, or are they just like another conglomerate doing all sorts of shit?
Yeah. And again, I feel like that is probably very reflective of probably most. I don't even know if that's corporations, but at least on most American corporations, it's like you look at the balance sheets and where the money, like where things are, and yeah, it's a lot of that. Especially the way the interest rates and stuff has been. It is like a lot of companies have done very, I think, unique things with cash on hand in their balance sheets, given how the last, we'll say, probably like 8 years have gone. Um, so like, what are you enjoying right now? Like, what we kind of went through some of the doom and gloom with like how you're feeling about cybersecurity. Like, what's the good, man? What gets you jazzed about life right now?
Honestly, I haven't put much thought into that. I mean, just like I'm just more or less going through the motions. Like it's good to get back to the gym. Um, like it's um, like I just I think I'm a pretty fixed person and pretty much. I mean, it was a gamer before COVID. I was a gamer after. Um, I want to get back into streaming, but I just haven't had the jazz for that. Like it's off. Um, I think it's stopped becoming my hobby at some point. It's like the games I wanted to play were so sporadic and so um basically,
Hold on, it's cut out a bunch. Give it a sec. See
uh,
if it catches up.
but
Yeah, I didn't hear like the last bit. You said last thing I think I really caught was like streaming in the games you're playing have been like what you found interested were a bit more sporadic and
everything was sporadic, kind of just like made it difficult to stream, which
okay.
I'm fine with. Like it's just like that's kind of been the thing. It's like some days I want to play LOR, some days I want to play Apex, some days I want to play like a couple games of League. Usually it's just one, and then that one game is just such a fucking hellscape that I just remind myself why the fuck did I play this game and
That's
close it again. It's like, and it's like you have a terrible person-to-person interaction on that game, where it's just like you just lose all faith in humanity, and you're like, "Fuck this game's shit," and then you just close it and go back to other things. Same.
that is a very fair representation of League. That's pretty much
Like
what I'm going through right now cuz like it's just that point of the Tarkov wipe, right? Like it's so easy to grind beginning a wipe. Like first 3 months there's an endless things of what to
what you
do,
can do, yeah,
and
exactly.
especially with the last few wipes, they've introduced enough new things that it's we can try this. So like I can approach. It's not like the same old, and I think even
Just
this
adds extra
next
things as
wipe we
well. So
get,
it's like
there'll be another expansion to Lighthouse. So it's like we got a new map. We've had a bunch of map expansions, and it's just
you
like
put and you like quests go along with it, so it's more
yeah,
content to do. So it's
right,
like
and
every
that's
time you wipe, and it's not just like you have to do the same short road again that you can do in a month or
and
like 2 weeks if you go full Kesley
right.
on it. You've got
And
to actually like put in some extra time to go through every step.
Right. And I think the other cool part is those same tasks, how you did them with the expansions and where the loot changes or loot additions, I should really say,
Yeah,
that come with the
on
expansions,
balance
you
change as
can
well.
you can really approach stuff different, right? Like, man,
Yeah,
finding
like, oh,
cigarettes used to be really hard for the mechanic quest, but like they've added so many food crates that you don't need keys for
Yeah.
and stuff that whole quest is how you approach it is different, and like how you can line up the quest now of where you're going and what you're looking for. It's so much different than what it was. So it's like at least the last to me like 3 wipes, I like where probably most people the new game vintage has like completely worn off. For me, it was like, well, at least now there's expansions, like there's new ways to approach it, and then it's like kind of a personal challenge of like, okay, can I do this faster? Can I do this better? What's a new way I can do this or anything? Because I'm at that point, and that's where first 3 months of wipe really I think kind of take care of themselves of just having a really good time, and then now it's like I kind of I'm that's mentally where I'm debating is like, how do I manage this for future wipes? Because it's always going to be like this until full game release, and there's a perma character and there's wipes, and I just feel like with Tarkov,
I'm yet to believe that Tarkov will ever fucking full release. It's like,
I think it will.
it's
I
like,
think it's close. I think it's close. I
will
really
they?
I
Do you
really
think they'll?
think
Do you think they'll still do wipes in the sense of like what old school RuneScape does? You
yeah
know, that they have a specific mode where they
yeah
have leaderboards. They have leaderboards, and it's open for X amount of time, and they have prizes for people's placement on X leaderboards, and
yeah.
every like 2 months or month,
I think
they'll
it'll still
do.
follow like a 6 month schedule because they'll probably add it with DLCs and whatnot because there is supposed to be a laundry list of DLCs that are supposed to come with this. But I think that's exactly what's going to happen. You'll have your main character that's your perma stash and play, and that'll be really fun for new people and all sorts of stuff. And when that happens, and then I think you'll have that kind of environment, potentially scoreboard, like whatever they do of ruble count or experience or however they kind of do it. I don't think there's like a very clear cut way with Tarkov right now to make like a global leaderboard, but like I think they
Oh,
can
they have
do that.
multiple leaderboards and that sort of thing. So it's
Yeah,
like
with like most
they'll do
kills. Yeah.
most kills, or it's like most kills, or most XP,
Yeah.
or uh fastest 99, or first 99, or things like that.
Yeah.
Like that's like they have like prizes for certain things, and like they during the league season, and they change up the rules during the league season as well. So like so leagues obviously, because RuneScape's fucking old, it's like fucking a mad grind, mad grind. They amplify XP rates and stuff like that to
Right.
make things go faster in that condensed amount of time. But they'll like, yeah, so they'll pump it up. Um, they'll pump up the rates in which you earn XP, and they'll also add a bunch of OP shit each season that mixes up the gameplay, mixes up the strategies. They decide to do it, and then after the wipe happens, like the person will be crowned, and it just goes back to normal business as usual until the next one. And then everyone again starts off with the same blank account, and competes in the new thing. So I wouldn't please it like something like that for Tarkov.
I think that's exactly what it's going to be like. I think you'll have your main character, so the people that don't want to wipe and they want to get geared up and just keep having fun and enjoy the DLCs.
They want to be a Russian oligarch of
Yeah,
rubles and
100%.
Chad gear, and yeah, and then there are those that
Right.
want
And then I think those of us that actually like want to challenge, I imagine there'll be other gear, like there'll be other rule sets, like the hardcore will be built in because Past has already talked to Nikita about doing it, and it can be done, right? Just like with tournaments, they build custom rule sets. So I don't know if they'll go. Eventually, I imagine, like especially if we're talking years down the road, it's been released. There's no like DLC plan. I could see just total custom servers being done, but I think even like an official hardcore server with the same thing,
Yeah,
a
hear me out.
leaderboard, anything like
Yeah,
that.
hear me out. Hear me out.
Yeah,
Tarkov VR.
I think it'd be huge, dude. I just
They've got once. Well, if they're doing streets, you could incorporate it in, no?
right. Well, you could, and so here's the one key component to that that's missing right now, and it deals with the multi-tool and being able to modify your gun on the fly, because that's going to be the sickest part. Is imagine you spawn in with a way to modify your gun. So not only is it a battle royale, you got to find your gun, but then you have to find the attachments to make a meta gun on top of finding ammo. Like all the usual stuff of BR, but then you actually have to build out a juice cannon, right? And then you think of competitive play, tournament play, Twitch rivals, you think of that kind of stuff. How much fun that would be to watch as someone is actually like getting kills and like completely like modifying on the fly.
Funny as it'd be still, and it would be funny as shit to watch, like people having to deal with what they get.
Yeah,
Like if all you get's like a fucking packer, and like
dude, you're gonna have some guy like win a tournament with a pack and a pistol because that's literally the only thing that like he could find, right? So you're gonna have like it's honestly when it comes to a BR, it's gonna be best in sloth.
And the mid element as well.
Yeah.
Like not just like you can't just like have a gear mid loadout. Like you've got to be thinking about your needs, and there'll be times where it's like it doesn't matter if you found a 416 with a sick fucking EOG and magnifier. Like if you've got a packer and no fucking meds, like you're gonna go get into a fight, and because it's Tarkov, you get fucking league blacked out. You're just gonna die.
I like then you're gonna have some guy that like spawns in and like loots something and pulls a thermal gun like from the break and like it's just like, but then no ammo or like whatever, right? You know, like there's so many components that I think it would actually make a really good BR. And already in the raid, like you already could go in with a raid with nothing and build a gun in raid and get kills and do it in raid. But if you built it around doing a BR and had like some map specific stuff and you adjusted the loot, I just think it'd be the most entertaining BR.
Need to adjust the loot. You would definitely need
you would
to
have
adjust
to. Yeah, you would have to.
There's a lot of shit with Tarkov where it's like
it wouldn't
meant to be fun, but it's like if it's not fucking fun, people don't like. People would want a Tarkov VR because they want the way the combat works in Tarkov.
Yeah.
To be a VR, a more realistic VR, kind of like the days of the fucking OG Arma 2 VRs.
Yeah.
And VR mods that people want, where it's like it's the pacing and the combat is how it is, but they don't want. Obviously, you don't want it to be like, here's an MP5. Good luck finding a mag. It's like if you find an MP5 on the ground, like you get a mag with it.
Right.
Like that's just it doesn't spawn without a mag, right?
Yeah, I think that would be the key thing is like, do you find a spare mag or like, yeah, I think those elements of Tarkov would come through. And like just how it's like you find a gun right now, there'll be some ammo in there, but we get a full mag, half mag. But I think it'd be really, I think it'd be very easy for them to do it. And I think that's the kind of stuff they could start to flip those switches once they get game release. And that's why I think game release is close. I think in the next year we have it.
What guns spawn around? Because if you're going to be spawning spear mags, right, you need to make it so there's a good chance that it's useful in more than just like one fucking gun. Not like you can't just have like a PPSH as well.
Yeah.
Just like spawn on the ground. Because like the times that you're going to find it, it's the times that you're actually going to be able to use it. Like there's got to be that balance of like you find sort of something like that every like second or third game. I was like, like to the VR balance. So it's like, if you think about it, it's like you can have any sort of like 30-round mag or 30-round standing, 20-round Vietnam era standing. It's like spawning on the ground because there are multiple ARs guns that accept that magazine. And it's
Yeah.
not even just like that, like 5.56 NPRs, things like that. Wow.
Yeah.
And then the same with the AK platform. You just have like 5.45 and 7.62 by 39 at the mag. And whether you have an RPK 74 or fucking or an
AK,
RPK,
yeah,
or,
like
or an
104 or
AKM,
whatever. Yeah, like, yeah.
or
Yeah.
an AKM, or it's like you can still just jam a fucking orange baked light into that AK, 5.45 AK, regardless of what period it's from. And the ammo as well. The ammo would be sort of like the whole. It's not quite like the same as like the other VRs where it's like it's X, Y, Z, and each certain gun puts X, Y, Z, and you can give it Z. So it's like it's standardized. So it's like 5.45, 6, 2x39, 7, 2x51, 5.56, 9mm mackerel, 9mm parabella. Like that alone covers a shitload of stuff.
I think
And
that's what'll be fun though about it. I just feel like that I feel like once full game release happens, I think you'll get a lot of offshoot modes or offshoot things. But I feel like what could really take this game to the next level is a BR. And I think bringing that element of like finding the butt stock and like boom, like you went from crap recoil to bomb recoil, like, or it's just like finding all the attachments and building on the fly, and like
I went from buffer tube ADAR to fucking
advanced receiver, right? You found an advanced receiver, and then you found a Magpul, and then like you killed someone and got the Magpul bump stock. Like, I think it's just gonna be a really cool. Like right now, Fortnite has PVE, and it's actually really fun because you can kill a boss and get good gear. That's what Tarkov is gonna. Tarkov BR would be that. It would be the loot. Yeah. It would be like building your gun. It would be killing scavs.
Have the APE element. But how heavy do they want to lead into the PvE element? Well, like I know Apex with the new map added a PvE element. And it's kind of like it's a risk reward element. Thing in that regard. It's like you can get lots of small. You play Apex spot.
Yeah.
That's what I've been on. That's the kind of got to do. Apex ranking line. Learning a new game. I had the console with other games, but at the same time, it's a goal. It's base. Play that. It's a real dividing games, as well as slow TTK, slow TTK. It's a change as well. Especially slowly as well as and the way the looting is as well. I like it. It's simple, but like it's a flawless game. Like there's no fucking loadout or that. Like it's a flawless game, but it's not like it's not too convoluted. It's not like fucking complicated or something like that where it's like really like really like it's as soon as you get those layers they seem to all the effects of VR it's like it just becomes short more or less and it's like all the dice with or not whereas like not making consistency whereas Warzone obviously you have loadouts so it's like that's consistency you need like you can survive the rock keep the money keep the loadout back in that it's just like the skill whereas it's like there's still but that like the definition of that it's like you more or less run around and be fine and one that's been done and they pipeline and so they get it like it's in the real game stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it's like if you being able to do one up, like you have your loadout which goes to the media.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that'll be the cool part of.
I played Warzone.
Yeah.
The only way the way to be yourself is to be the world. Playing the fucking
Yeah.
it's like having a make
Warzone's interesting, right? Because like you rely you have to get enough kills to get a loadout, and then and then it really starts, right? But you'll never see anyone win Warzone without that loadout, and I just feel like that's what would be so cool about Tarkov is you'll see people end the game with probably pretty kitted stuff, but it's really that journey of dropping in and getting to that same endpoint that Warzone has. Like you'll probably see the same characters, like you said. I think 5.56 and AKs given ammo or shotguns or like whatever it is, right? Especially as the circle closes in, like shotguns probably be like very like everyone would have a shotgun on them as a secondary, but it's like that journey of getting to final circle is gonna just like you'll see the same meta or meta-ish builds, but I just think that journey of getting there is gonna be way more exciting to play and way more exciting to watch. I think that esports component of like, holy shit, seeing everyone like have to build on the fly, having a couple key areas where there's a potential boss or high tier loot, so there's just a lot of action in those spots. I like the game has to make one. Like I feel like it's such, I feel like too, at least on full release, if it gets to a point where they don't make one, someone will do what's his name did with PUBG. They'll make a Tarkov BR, and they'll use the game shell and do a custom server, and I guarantee it to take off. But I can't imagine Nikita not already having the vision and the foresight of like, okay, we made the most unique shooter out there. Now let's go take over every other market that exists for shooters with this property, and I think it would just, they'd slate it as, one of their other things, because they want to make a single player game. Like Nikita still wants to do that. Oh, you're cutting out. Hold on a sec. You're cutting out.
They probably wanted to
Hold on. It's a little scratchy. I'm going to disconnect and reconnect, see if that helps. Sorry, everyone. I know it's a little cutting out here. All right. Go again. No, it's actually I can't hear you now. Give it a sec. Do you want to try disconnect and reconnect?
Test.
Oh my god, that is so much better.
That's my end.
Night and day difference. But yeah,
there's a lot of things that they wanted to do,
yeah.
But the current political situation probably makes it difficult for them.
They've obviously kept everything very close to the chest, but like, do you think they're hurting for money? Like, what do you? I know they have investors, and I imagine.
I don't think the issue is so much the money as it is the fact that they as a company can't really distance themselves from it
Yeah.
because they rely on the fucking Russian weapons and military industry for like a lot of their shit, like a lot of their rights to the stuff that they use. Um, and a lot of that stuff is owned now by the Russian government, right? Like, so it's like they're stuck in the point where they would need to lean into them they've got to keep them happy so they can be able to make their game. But at the same time, it's like it's gonna hurt their image internationally. So
Yeah, I
it,
mean, they got a lot of, and again, they were very, very, very silent about it, which I can't. I mean,
I think they're just trying to keep their fucking head down,
I
more or less.
and I think so because I don't think it's a very popular opinion to be excited about what Russia's doing, and I think especially making a game about a war torn Russia, where the game itself doesn't have a lot of the civilian death and destruction. They're visible, and it's in an undertone of everything going on, right? And like you're looting a dead scav and things like that. So I don't think it is lost on them at all. And actually, I think if there's a lot of notes to, I would say, Eastern Europe history of really a general tone of the game. And so I don't think they're for it. Maybe they are. Maybe some of them are. Right. There's also a huge company, there, for an indie development. But you can't be vocal either way because if you are vocal for it, the international community and most of us and most of their player base is not Russian. Granted, they have a good Russian player base, but like that's not okay. And if you speak out against it, well, now you just pissed off a very controlling government. Yeah, exactly. You're gonna have the servers just might go down on you, right? Like all sorts of stuff is just could happen to you at that point because you went against the government. So I do think they're in a really
you're not gonna have the backing of like Kalashnikov concern.
Yeah.
So instantly like you're gonna lose all of your licensing for shit. So
Yep.
it's like you take everything that like that isn't like you remove like the stuff that isn't obviously just like not it's like a free pattern anymore. Like you remove like the newer model AKs, all the Zenitco shit. You remove all of that from the game because you can't do licensing for it anymore.
Yeah.
Like what do you have at that point? It's just like
yeah, you're gonna have to make up a bunch of stuff, right? And that's what it's like. I think the one of the few things that is made up about the game is like fucking Kiba arms, but like you can't have a whole suite of weapon attachments that are it takes away from it. It drastically takes away from the magic of the game.
One of the big appealing factors was the way that the gunsmithing in that game was
right.
It was pioneering for its time. Like that was back when like Battlefield 3 had like 3 attachment slots and that was crazy.
Right.
Like and a whole slew of like underbarrels and optics and muzzle attachments to choose from. And that was like ahead of COD to an extent, where COD was fucking around with perks and kill streaks, but they were still real simple with like red dot sights and it's like what
and you
what
get one if you pick a red dot you get the same red dot, not in Tarkov where man you have a whole suite and they've added more too. It's like with this past patch they keep adding more and more, so it's just right. Even canted you could probably have I think like 6 different options to go canted, let alone your main red dots or your all the options you have for that, all the scopes that you have. Like yeah, there's still it's crazy that nothing is out there. Yeah,
that was like part of the appeal. And as soon as you start pulling away from that because you piss off Russian manufacturers, Russian government, then like they're in such a hard spot. They're in such a hard spot
Yeah.
right now.
I think, and the flip side of that too is if you go too pro Russia,
there is no winning. As soon as they take a side, as soon as they
100%.
open their mouth on the issue, they lose.
Right, and that's what
And
I'm
that's why
like.
they're not saying anything.
Yeah, that's where like hell, that could piss off Magpul, right? The good old boys in Austin, Texas, right here in the town I'm living in, could be like, yeah, fuck those guys. I don't want to do that shit. Like, fuck that game. We're not charging them enough anyway. Or again, rates change. All sorts of stuff changes. You know, whether it's stated or not stated, the whole environment changes at that point. You know.
Exactly, and it's not, and from a future development standpoint, it's really hard to pump your product with your mouth shut.
Right.
Really hard.
Right.
It's really fucking hard. So it's like they're in a really tough spot where it's like they want things to just fucking blow over one way or another.
Yeah.
But the reality is I don't think it is because Putin's doing what he wants. He's playing the long game. He's busting out the fucking 10,000 fucking tanks in reserve that they've had from Soviet era, ready to get them all fucking up and ready to go. And the United States is happy because
they don't actually machine goes going, baby.
Because they don't actually have to do anything. All that they need to do is give a blank check of, hey, rack up this debt, Ukraine, while the board members on fucking Raytheon and fucking Lockheed Martin and everything else, they all get to just start pumping out munitions on the US government's dime. The US government's happy because they get to enslave the Ukraine with debt.
They get to keep the war machine keeps going, right? The war machine keeps turning there.
And unlike the Lend-Lease of World War II, there is no cap on the time limit. It's not a 5-year cap. After that, that's it. You're done. Like, we're not going to loan you any more money. You're going to start paying it back over time. Like, there is literally no fucking cap. So, like, Ukraine will become just indebted to the United States and Lend-Lease debt.
The other component to that is you're draining Russian resources too, right? So
I mean, it's the same as the Soviet. It's the same as the Soviet.
We're back to Afghanistan. Yeah. Like this is Afghanistan 2.0.
Angola, done fucking Vietnam indirectly to in a sense. Like
I think
it's just
I think the perfect example to me is Afghanistan because it's unfortunate we're not, especially I think as America, looking at this situation and realizing the long-term effects of mass arming people, of flooding weapons in the street, arming.
They know full well what they're doing. They just don't give a fuck.
Well,
if you really gave a shit about the state of the world and the state of the humanitarian cost of this, you would have. I mean, the second Russia went over the border, you would have gotten the Air Force at Ramstein fucking up and running, and you would be going in for air superiority off the bat. Like, you would be sending proper military assistance.
Yeah.
And pushing Russia out quick smart. You wouldn't be just giving them a bunch of debt to buy javelins off you. And fucking and small arms. Like, you would be actively saying, no, you don't invade sovereign nations, get the fuck back, and the world would stand with you.
Yeah.
And it would be over pretty bloody quickly because the resources of NATO versus the resources of Russia is like fucking night and day. Like, Russia can't sustain it. NATO would pretty much have it sorted, right?
Well, my thing is when the only way for that to have worked is at the moment Russian intel said we're going to invade. If that is when the call to arms went like we are like, do not do that, right? That message was never sent from day one.
That's the thing though, is Putin threatens to use his nuclear arsenal, right?
Right.
The second you fucking blink at that threat, the whole thing of mutually assured destruction undermines.
Right.
Like it doesn't work at that point. Like the whole deterrent of nuclear weapons is we'll fucking nuke you if you nuke us. And if you aren't willing to do something because another side said they're going to nuke you, you've lost already. It's like you need to, like, you can't just roll over to it, because then that will always, it sets the precedent if it would always work. Like through the past, after nuclear proliferation, whenever something happened with nukes, like Cuban Missile Crisis, like the US didn't go, oh sorry, or oh we don't want to piss them off. They were like, no, don't, fuck you, and double down. Like,
yeah, I just don't think
and
it would work I think the problem is that strategy, it became too late, because I think that had to have, there should have, to your point of like the, like Ramstein Air Force Base, like basically the whole free world should have, basically the moment Intel said Russia's going to invade, should have said, like, we are on standby and we will fuck you up if you get in there close.
Open source and the open source Intel community, right? Not even fucking the Intel agencies. The open source Intel community was predicting a high chance of invasion 3 to 4 weeks before the invasion. The second the North Sea fleet was going through the Med, just photos that were circulating on Twitter and stuff, they were able to ascertain that those ships were fucking loaded to the gunnels with people and supplies, because they would, but simply by looking at how low they were riding on the waterline, they were able to look at them and go, this is not a normal fucking load of on their ships. Like, they were sitting way lower.
Yeah.
And the fact that a full fleet was sitting super fucking low and going to the Black Sea, like, a lot of the open source people were just like, yeah, they're like, it's pretty likely, there's a really, really, really high chance they're going to invade. You don't go and mobilize your entire fleet like that for no fucking reason.
I think the other hard part is the only one pounding their chest saying it was going to happen was U.S. Intel, and there's such a lack of trust, rightfully so, in the global community with U.S. Intel in particular, that everyone was like, nah, like, they're just going to keep playing their war games in Donbass. Like, nothing's going to happen, even though U.S. Intel was like,
the US
this happened.
But there was a large proportion of the U.S. Intel community that was like saying, that was like all that hoopla of, oh, it could happen here because of the Thor, and like the U.S. Intel community publicly didn't say shit. Like, they didn't fucking know. They said, we don't know.
Well,
but at the same time, it's like, I think how much of that was them not wanting to be fucking wrong,
well,
to make the statement and be wrong about it.
I think that is one portion. The other portion, again, it's the powers to be. If U.S. Intel, if Western Intel, if Interpol, if everyone was like, it is happening, then that conversation of, okay, do we fuel up the planes? Do we get all of our armaments? Do we get all of our tanks? Do we get every UN resource that is anywhere close to Ukraine, put it on the border of Poland?
This just shows perfectly that the UN is a hamstrung fucking useless organization at this point.
Yeah,
like,
but that's why, like, I meant NATO, but like,
peace, and when the Security Council can't intervene in a fucking invasion of a sovereign nation by another sovereign nation,
also run by Russia.
Like, if at the point the UN Security Council can't intervene in that regard, like, it's like done. People have been saying this with all the proxy fucking wars that were happening, that the UN is a fucking useless puppet organization at this point. But like, now it's like it's
front and center at that.
The UN can sit there and go, we condemn, doesn't stop it. Doesn't stop the fucking rocket artillery strikes hitting civilian centers because Russians don't go out of their way to kill civilians. Russians don't have to confirm like pattern of life movements and shit on an area before they rock the fuck out of it. They just go, we're getting shot from here, and they go, all right, seen the artillery at it. So
like, there's lots of other places in the world that have had drone strikes and shelling and conflict, and the UN's just like put their head in the dirt when like
the UN just gets hamstrung, where it's like, it's like, we can't. It's like, we want to intervene. Okay, the Security Council holds a meeting regarding it, and it's always the same deal.
Yeah.
China, Russia vetoes.
Yeah.
Everyone else agrees.
Yeah.
We need a unanimous vote to this to go ahead.
Right.
Well, fuck, we're back to square one. It's like
you'll never have a unanimous vote.
You will never have a unanimous vote because Russia and China are on the other side of it. Are permanent members. They're permanent members of the council.
Right.
So it's like you can have the United States, Britain, and what's the other? Is it France? Who's the other permanent member of the Security Council?
Um,
I think it's France. I think it's the 5 largest weapons manufacturers are the 5 permanent members of the Security Council.
France, Russia, China, France, Russia, UK, and US.
States.
Yeah. Good luck getting in this environment. Like, good luck ever getting all of those on the same page. You just won't. It could be whether that is global warming, whether that is terrorist organizations, whether that is countries warring. You're going to have just the fact that China and the US are in it. You'll never have a unanimous vote.
Yeah,
you'll never have that.
So it's useless. Yeah. Like it's fucking useless at this point.
Yeah.
Like, So like, and I personally think the way it rolled out was, I think that. And do you remember when they were trying to push that whole U.S. intelligence agencies are saying Putin's gone insane and he's going to nuke us, and his brain's fucked from steroids and blah blah blah, and it's like it's amazing how Putin can go from a perfectly rational man in the eyes of the public world in the intel community to a fucking nutcase whose brain's fucked on steroids in the space of 2 weeks. Like, it doesn't fucking happen like that. Like, it's like, never trust intelligence agencies because they're just providing covering fire for the powers that be.
Yeah.
It's like the US doesn't really, if the truth of like, we don't actually want to go help them. We just want to we just want to give them a bunch of money, government money, to buy a bunch of arms from our private companies and keep our war machine going, and then get them in a bunch of debt and have it drag out and be a humanitarian shit show so we can profit from it. And not actually have to commit anything to it. If they were to publicly just say that, like, there'd be a shit show. Like, there'd be people be up in fucking arms about it. So instead, they come up with every excuse. They come up with every excuse. In return, they come up with every excuse to rationalize why they didn't intervene themselves, and the intel agencies provide covering fire for it. It was the same deal with the Koof situation. I'm not going to say it just because I know what this platform's like with that sort of talking about it. It's like it's the same sort of deal where it's like, you remember when they were like, U.S. intel agencies are of high certainty that the pandemic started from a lab accident, right?
Right.
And then 2 weeks fucking later, the same intel agencies were unanimous that it was not. It's like I don't understand how you can go from being near unanimous and like high likelihood of something being one thing to the high likelihood of the opposite when the fucking factors given barely changed. Right. Like the information factors barely changed. Right. It's like at this point it's like whatever gets released to the public about intelligence agencies, don't look at it as the truth. Look at it as, what do they want us to think? Right. Like what like it's if they tell you something, it's because they want you. It's the whole psyops element as well. It's like if whatever they say is not because of like shit that's leaked and shit that gets out. It's not because they want you to know it, because they want to keep their people informed. Right. No, whatever they say is fucking because they want you to know. Yeah. And why do they want you to know it? And why do they want you to think that? And you have to think about it that way.
That's going back to we're talking initially on Afghanistan. It's just like we're playing just a higher. It's like you went like Afghanistan in the 80s. We're now playing that, but we're at the high rollers table now, right? We're throwing just it's a bigger war. It's bigger
not a,
warfare.
it's not a, yeah,
It's like,
and it's not a fucking, there's no cutouts with the fucking arms dealers and the
yeah,
Mujahideen
right,
and kids just being stingers to shoot
right.
down the
Yeah, we
Hinds.
don't
It's
need the
fucking,
CIA
it's
right now.
fucking,
We're just mass
it's,
arming.
hey, yeah, we're here. We're the ones supplying. We're the world supplying. Yeah,
Yeah.
have fun. Like, yeah.
And yeah, like I think what will be the scary part.
It's a win for the war machine and a
Yeah.
win for the United States government, and it's a loss for the small man on all sides.
Well,
it's a loss
the
for
biggest,
it's a loss
yeah.
for the humanitarian aspect. It's a loss on the humanitarian side, and it's a loss for like the everyday citizen of Ukraine. And
Yeah.
Ukraine is a country.
No,
Like Ukraine
yeah.
just fucking loses in this.
No,
There's no
100%.
winning this.
Because the
Just
problem is, what does Ukraine look like after this? You have javelin, like we're spending
It's
how
fucked.
many javelins, like
We
guns,
saw it with World War II.
armament.
Like it will take decades. It'll take decades and a fuckload of money for Ukraine to come right. And even then, it's like Ukraine never wins.
Yeah.
Like it's like did Europe lost World War II. Britain lost World War II, regardless of whether they actually won the
only one that
war.
won
Like,
was North America, right?
was United States.
Yeah, that's
United
it.
States. United States
100%.
was the only country that profited out of World
Yeah.
War II. Like
There
all
was-
the Lend-Lease debt and all
Well,
of the
Russia too.
gained
I
technology.
guess we could say Russia, because Russia was in civil war and in shambles, and
True.
then they got their shit together because
They got their spoils of war
Right.
up to fucking Berlin.
right.
Yeah.
So like we could say that, but the real winner, because
Was
all
the
of
United
the
States.
microwaves, fridges, laundry, washer dryers, like every cars, like we became the global supplier and designer of everything at that point. Also, we're the only one in the world to have dropped a nuke on another country, so no one really was gonna fuck with us, right? So it wasn't like Russia was immediately gonna just jump and send over some troops to try and take us. It kind of let our little isolated country.
The US went from a side player,
Yeah.
a notable side player in world geopolitics, to the fucking center of the world.
Right.
Because
And
of
that's
World War
and
II.
that's what happens when, one, you're the only one that can manufacture because your country's not war torn, and two, you dropped a fucking nuke. You life
Yeah.
and total regard of life in combat.
But even how they
changed
got
at
to that point of harnessing the nuke, had the United States not gotten involved, they wouldn't have had the nuke.
Yeah.
It's like the US nuclear program was built upon the brains of German scientists.
Yeah, they were all
German
expats
scientists.
that they got out during. Many of them were Jewish, and right when shit went
A
bad.
large portion of
Yeah.
them were Jewish.
Yeah, and
Hitler believed nuclear science was Jewish science.
Yeah.
I believe was the quote.
but like
So-
most of them were Jewish, and so but most of them came to they were all high value targets that were extracted when shit started to go bad in Europe. But I just
And it's the same deal again. It's like the US is now in the position that Britain was in pre-World War II, where like they're the body that people are looking to stand up to it. And instead of doing the right thing, they're just setting themselves up as another way to just make fucking money and profit. Rather than like I also think as well, I think the public opinion and the government's opinion and the public opinion on war has been fucked over so much post World War II because of all the other shit.
Yeah.
Like, when was the last war where it was pretty fucking clear cut unanimous that this was the right thing to do to go back this? Like, World War II was probably it, right?
well
Everything else was also bullshit geopolitical proxy war, right?
well I would say
During the Cold War.
9/11, the beginning, when everyone was on. You had a global.
Oh, Afghanistan. Afghanistan, I think was early Afghanistan.
Early,
was probably a fair call.
when weapons and mass destruction, when everyone was like, okay,
See,
like we'll back
the
you,
thing was,
America, because
Iraq was a bullshit war. Iraq
Yes.
was one of the bullshit
Oh,
wars.
100%.
Lost
it was
public
already
opinion on it. like Afghanistan, you can say removing the Taliban from power in Afghanistan and going after bin Laden
Yeah.
and Afghanistan, that's like after 9/11, like you can get behind that.
Yeah.
Like
And
I
I
think most
think
people
the
can get behind
global
that.
community
But the whole
was, yeah,
WMD and invasion of Iraq was all bullshit.
it was, that was the great fall right there. The great L of America. But like I it's being here in America and like seeing conversation and how people are discussing things, and it's just like it's it's really
Like
funny to me. One, in the early part of this, it was really funny to me of how everyone was like, certain people were like, Biden's being way too soft, and I was like, well, like
that's the
nukes
problem.
could drop, like
Nukes can always drop though, and that's the thing is I think in a situation like this, it's a it's hard
yeah,
because it could be potentially dangerous with under if it was under Trump, but it's also fucking really dangerous. It's still dangerous under Biden because you have a babbling dementia patient as your commander in chief during an extreme point of like global tension.
at least
Like
nukes aren't dropping. Is my and I think
nukes aren't dropping um solely because the West has rolled over to an extent. Like
well,
that, like
we're going back to status quo, right?
they initially rolled over, right? They initially just like rolled over
Yeah,
when this whole thing happened.
yeah,
They were afraid to send fucking certain military equipment in fear of pissing off Russia.
right.
Like that you shouldn't be taking your position based on fear of that. Like nuclear weapons are there as a deterrent from other nuclear nations, and the whole reason we as a world is stopping the proliferation of them is so these very strong armed tactics can don't fucking happen. Like we have a set few nations who have the nuclear capabilities and they're the arbiters of that, and then the other big ones keep those in check, stop them from being like the whole point of it is just like the United States and Russia and everyone else having all their nukes is to stop other big countries. Like if the United States didn't have nukes, Russia would muscle everyone with nukes like they're doing now. If Russia didn't have them, the United States would be muscling everyone with nukes, and that's
Right.
the whole thing. Is it's a check and balance element of it. But as soon as you roll over to it, as a nation with large nuclear capacity, as soon as you roll over to it out of fear, then like you've lost. Like you've lost that the power of it. Like you're letting them get what they want. It's like
I think the
you need
other
to
thing about
you
this,
give them the power. It's like a guy holding a gun to your head only has as much power as you are fearing to die, so to speak. Like the
yeah,
moment that person says "fuck you, fuck this," like that person loses a large portion of their power.
that's fair. I think the other big component to this is it just turned back into status quo, right? Yeah, it's the same shit we've been doing since the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and
Yeah.
basically it's even before then. We're back to, oh, we can fight this proxy war, right? We don't need to do anything here. We can just
Yeah.
keep doing the same
Hammered.
bullshit that we've all done.
That's true, but you also have a gun. You pull your gun at you pull your gun out and point it at his head and say, "Fuck you! Stop this shit! Stop this shit now! Be prepared to pull your trigger."
So
Because do remember that as much as people say Putin's crazy and he'll use nukes, no, he fucking like he stands using nukes is pointless. Like if you're in a situation of like it's the ultimate fucking loss. Like you will capitulate before you get nuked. Like that's the reality of the situation.
yeah, I
Like
don't. Well,
the thing
but
is the guns. When you were talking about nukes, Hammer, the guns are kind of there, and the guns are there, pointed at each other anyway. But you put your say you put your he puts his finger on the trigger, you put your finger on the trigger. Let's just say that because that's just how the thing is. It's like and also the same thing is their nuclear doctrine is the same as United States to an extent. It's similar. It's like one
yeah,
person cannot pull that trigger,
right.
and
The
how many of these
protocols,
people
yeah.
under them are also gonna agree on this.
Yeah, it's similar chain of command. It is very similar chain of command of like if you wanted to launch a nuke on a sub, who it has
If
to go through and
he doesn't have to capitulate though. The people around him just need to capitulate. And how many of them are willing to like you're a fucking military officer in the Russian military, working for their nuclear systems. You're a devout believer of the cause. Maybe you're not. Maybe you are, but maybe you don't want your fucking family to get glassed. Maybe you don't want to get glassed. And how many of those officers just need to go, fuck this shit? No, we're not getting glassed. And just because they're still going to have a job after this. Like,
yeah, the only person that would get taken out of power is Putin if it like
Putin.
Yeah, because
it's like they're like the military people are still going to have a fucking job after this. Like they can go, fuck this, we're out.
My thought, my biggest, like unless something drastically changes.
The thing is he's not crazy.
Well,
Putin's not crazy. He's not gonna. The thing is Putin is not crazy. This is just some spin that's being done to try and dissuade direct intervention to get this over and done quickly. Like Putin is an extremely intelligent and calculated, manipulative person. This is the person who came to power by fucking bombing their own fucking people and blaming it on the Chechens. Like, this is that man. Like, he knows full well, like, everything he does is fucking 4D chess.
See,
like, he's not stupid
at all. My biggest thing, though,
and he's not crazy. He's just an extremely calculated. He's a fucking what's the word? He's very Machiavellian and psychopathic. Like, he has no remorse and he's extremely cunning and calculated. He's not stupid.
My biggest concern though goes back to what happens to Ukraine after all this.
Hitler wasn't very smart. Realistically, Hitler wasn't very smart.
Hitler made a lot of big
Hitler
mistakes.
Hitler wasn't very cunning. Hitler just played into. Remember that Hitler was elected. Hitler was elected because he appealed to a sentiment that existed within the German people at the time.
They were poor and hungry, and they needed someone to blame, basically.
And he believed that, and he believed that as well.
Yeah,
like, he put his own spin on already existing political ideologies.
In terms of, I don't want to get derailed too hard, but in terms of Hitler, if you think if he would have went with Operation Sea Lion and invaded England instead of Russia, do you think we'd be speaking more German right now?
No.
You don't think so?
No, not at all. I think the war was lost before he went in. The thing was the war was lost before the invasion of the Soviet Union even happened, or an invasion of Britain.
I don't know. Timing would have been very different because Russia wouldn't have been able. Like, the only reason Russia mobilized is because they were getting invaded, right? Russia was in literal shambles. Russia was in literal shambles. They didn't even start rebuilding all their railroad and infrastructure from the civil wars until the moment, like, they were getting their shit pushed in.
See, the thing was the only reason Germany invaded was because of the uneasy truce that was already, like, between them and the Russians, supplying them with Caucasus oil, right? Supplying them with Caucasus oil was not going to be forever. And Germany knew that it was not going to be forever. So Germany seized the initiative and invaded early because they knew that it was never going to last forever. That Russia, their uneasy tolerance of each other between the Soviet Union and Germany was not going to last.
But
so they took the first move. So, like, regardless, if they don't invade there, they still fucking lose.
But the thing is,
they're still going to lose because Britain doesn't have the resources that they need to sustain their war, right? So, like, it doesn't matter.
But you would have had a very different. But the thing is, Russia was very divided. What united Russia was the fact there was an army with massive tanks that is conquering the whole world, and Russia had to put aside everything to unite. That's what Germany did. If Germany would have been like, we're not invading, they could have fucking... Russia was in such fragments of different groups. I guarantee you they could have just fueled the civil war. They could have worked. It there would have been nothing to unite Russia and rebuild and build an army as fast in the way they did if Germany never stepped foot on their soil, because that's how much in crumbles they were, right? So it's like, to me, it's like if Rommel would have been given full control.
Because the country, I don't believe the country was that deep in civil war though. At that point though,
it was in shambles from the Civil War. They hadn't been rebuilding and stuff at that point.
The October Revolution and shit. The October Revolution and the purges happened well before the start of World War II. Like,
but the country hadn't recovered. What got them to recover was the war machine, and the war machine didn't start until Germany started pushing it.
I think they were under Putin. That's not Putin. I think they were under Stalin's iron fist before World War II. At that point, in terms of the infrastructure and the industry, definitely World War II kicked that shit off.
Right. It put into overdrive.
It just sped things up. But the reality is Germany didn't have the resources to sustain it. They didn't, and they had to invade. Like that's the reality of the thing. They needed the oil fields in the Caucasus because they had no fucking oil reserves.
Well, part of that,
and even if you invade England, you're going to use a shitload of your remaining resources that you do have.
But I think the global tone changes, right? Because Ireland almost went like they were trying to start another right? So I just feel like
there was a lot of Irish fascist sentiment as well.
If the holdout of Europe was the UK, you had a docile we'll say it fragmented. I won't say broken, but we'll say a fragmented Russia. There's two things to me that we could be speaking German, or at least more German right now, is if Rommel had been given control of Africa.
Okay, here we go.
They invaded the UK. They invaded England.
Plowboy.
What?
Hitler was never going to side with the Reds. Fundamentally, he was never going to side with the Reds. Hitler did not like communism. Hitler did not like communism. He believed it to be he called it Jewish Bolshevism in Mein Kampf. Like, he did not like communism. He believed capitalism and communism were both creations of the Jewish people.
It also wasn't the Germany MO. Like, the Germany MO was, if you had a big opponent, your goal was to find their closest enemy and recruit them, right? Mexico and parts of South America were like, yo, fuck America, be on our side, right?
Yeah.
Went to Ireland to create to give them a place to go fight more of England. They went to Ireland and was like, yo, fuck these guys. So I think if they wouldn't have invaded Russia, and they would have had more, let's say they took over, let's say they would have at least occupied and could say to the world there was a dub in England, and they could have probably turned Ireland, so that at least was on their side. Other countries, I think, would have said maybe they could win this thing, or at least would be more engaged with them at that point.
The problem is Germany didn't have the resources to invade England, right? They didn't have the oil reserves, as well as the food shortages were fucked as well. They didn't have the resources to invade England. That is why they wanted a quick war with the resources they did have, pushing into the Soviet Union to get the Caucasus oil fields and the food resources out of Russia, so they could then be able to push west into Britain, right?
Yeah, but if they did Operation Sea Lion and went straight into London and took over London.
Yep, but then what do you have? London doesn't have Britain doesn't have large oil reserves either.
No, I think you just get the Queen to say we surrender.
You get the Queen to say we surrender.
Or,
but at that point, the United States was still involved.
Churchill to fucking say I'm done, right?
And Churchill was never going to surrender. Churchill would never capitulated. He wasn't Chamberlain. Like, Britain was never going to surrender. It was going to be a costly occupation, and we all know what fucking occupying foreign nations with a populace that is essentially is a what's the word I'm looking for? Insurgency. You're essentially
Well,
dealing with an insurgency at that point.
it's a little bit
Like,
different. It's a little bit. I mean, look at how. Granted, France, there was obviously lots of
yeah, there was an insurgency
revolution.
in
Right,
France as well.
there was lots of fighting, but I still think they could have got a surrender on paper by just taking over, just overwhelming London, right? Just overwhelming London. And the reason why London never surrendered was because there was never boots on the ground. There was rockets in the sky and airplanes in the sky.
I
But there
don't
was
I don't
never.
think Russia I don't think England would have surrendered. I think England was very much stalwart in that. Is probably second to Japan, was probably the most stalwart country in that war. They'd already lost so much. They were at the point there where they were not just going to fucking surrender. Like,
I think it would have been the breaking point. I think it would have been the
I
breaking
don't
point.
think so.
Or at least, you know what? At least if they had boots on the ground and could say again, the spin doctor element, if they had done that, they've invaded the last stronghold of allied forces in Europe. Like they could have, I think other countries would have started to jump on the Axis side, right? And again, looking at like America's South American countries,
Americas and
Mexico potentially, right? Like
maybe Spain, Franco,
right.
Franco
So,
Spain may have.
right. But the other component with that is they would have had to have kicked out allied forces in Africa. The only way you would have done that is give it to Rommel and had him run the show, and he actually would have pushed us out of Casablanca, and like we would actually wouldn't have had our stronghold.
It's a whole lot of ifs, buts. It's a
It's
whole
true,
lot of
it's
it's
true,
a whole
it's
lot
true.
of fucking
It's
it's a
true.
whole lot of changing specific narrative events in history.
Well-
But as soon as you change one of those things, the whole fucking thing
No,
changes
that's
so
fair.
much.
That's fair. But
It's like,
yeah, it's fair.
You can
That's fair.
maybe change one thing. To be fair, if like you're talking about alternate history, you can maybe change one key event, and that's it. Like you don't get to fucking. But then what if they did X, Y, Z,
Yeah, but yeah,
and DC and A as well?
I just really think I mean I think Operation Sea Lion is the greatest. The fact they didn't move forward with Operation Sea Lion was the greatest win for the Allied forces. And
See, I disagree. I think Operation Sea Lion would have still would have ended the same, because the problem was you spend a whole lot of your resources to invade and control England. You then have to deal with an insurgency in another country, not just fucking France and Belgium and the Netherlands and everywhere else in between. You've now got to deal with an insurgency in a remote fucking island as well. And then not only that, you don't gain much from it. Like, Britain was fucking strapped for resources by that point. You gain no real spoils of war. At that point. So it's like you've gone and you've extended yourself for that, and then the problem was to be able to maintain this, you need to constantly have a flow of these resources to be able to maintain what you've taken. And they wouldn't have had the resources to do so because they weren't gaining enough from it. That's the thing though. It's like that's why they wanted to push into the Caucasus, was because they knew that without the resources of Russia, they were never going to sustain any sort of protracted conflict. And the only way you can get those resources is invading Russia. And if you invade Russia, well, then we're just back in the same fucking point, right? Like, Hitler was never going to align with the Bolsheviks because he believed it as Jewish. So you were never going to get an alliance between Russia and Germany. That was just not going to happen because Hitler's ideology. As a smart leader, sure, maybe. Yes, tactically it was probably a smart call. But remember that this wasn't a war based on smarts and cunning. It was based on it was based on ideology.
Right.
So like you have to look at it that way. So like as much as you could say what if, it was never really going to happen. So hypothetically, even if you do take the Caucasus oil fields, you've invaded Russia, and you do have your resources to build out in a long conflict, but then you start falling into this other shortages, manpower shortages. You can cover your food and oil shortages, but then you start falling into manpower shortages, and Germany still fucking loses. Like, you invade England, you get no resources, Germany still fucking loses in the long run.
So
You don't invade Soviet Russia, the uneasy truce between the two fails, you run out of resources, you still fucking lose.
So my thing is, do you think our first spearhead would have been Africa if Operation Sea Lion had happened? Do you think that US's first entry points would have been going to Africa and trying to push them from the backside, or do you think it would be to reclaim the UK?
I think it would just be their doctrine. I think it would be very protracted. I think it would be a case of doing the shit that they did like with the Cold War. It's running them out of resources till they collapse. Like regardless of whether they get England or not, Germany would not be able to sustain their empire indefinitely. They would eventually collapse. So just be putting pressure on them. It would be supplying resistance movements. It would be supplying Russia and having Russia fuck with them on the east. It'd be doing all of these things until they eventually just run dry. Like, Russia just needs to reclaim their fields and their Caucasus oil, their oil fields and their food production, and then boom, Germany's war machine comes to a grinding fucking halt again. Like, then they can't sustain their occupations and their control.
I just am wondering if we would have. It'd be really interesting in that scenario of how our strategy. I want to look. There has to be someone had to have wrote a plan of what the U.S. would have done. I'm just really curious, like where our first spearhead would have been, because I don't know if we would have put so much pressure onto Africa then, if that was the case.
Like, the thing with Germany in World War II, right, is
don't be sorry, Plowboy. Sorry, I'm not like
there is
as
no
engaging,
real scenario in which Germany
I appreciate your
outright wins the
fucking
fucking war. It's just never happening. There's no end game where the world speaks German and we live under a Nazi regime. Like, it just doesn't work. It's just, there is no end result where that happens. There's an end result where they might claim a few countries and then somehow fuck if I know how they get it to happen. Get the people to the negotiating table and say this is, and end it and have an armistice. But there's no way that Hitler gets what he wants. There is no way that
there is one crazy reality, right, where they dropped the nuke first, where they used jet fighter plane, like they bought enough time and got enough resources.
But they're never going to drop the nuke first because nuclear science is Jewish science. They were never going to win the nuclear race. That's the thing. The war was lost.
But I mean,
from the start
they were working on it though.
Because of the fundamental ideologies of the Nazis themselves, the war was lost before it had even fucking started in the long run. That's the problem. Like, Germany, when you think about it, like Germany was extremely impressive. The fact that they really did punch above their weight and take the world and by surprise with what they did in swarming France and taking over Europe. Like,
they had superiority firepower, right? Like, that is the technological advancements they had. It was like you were bringing a gun to a fist fight in a lot of instances.
Like, they took advantage of a world that was still running on old fucking trench warfare doctrine and equipment with mechanized warfare.
Right.
They fucking pioneered mechanized warfare and rapid movement like, what's the word? Combined arms and mechanized warfare.
Right.
They fucking revolutionized it and took the world by surprise, and that got them the western side of Europe, aside from the UK and Spain, because they were buds. But it got them that. But that was as much as they were going to get. As soon as the world realized that this is the future of warfare and adapts themselves, they don't win anymore. As well as the fact that the ideology fundamentally undermines their ability to fight wars. The war was kind of lost from the start. Like, doing what they did was as good as they were ever going to get, and they did it, and then they crumbled and fell back, as was the kind of the case. So, like, as much as people want to root for the underdog of Germany in World War II, like,
I hope no one wants to root that. I just
no, people not in the sense that they like it, but it's just like the whole underdog. What if?
Oh yeah.
People like to do the what ifs and find a way for the underdog to win just for the sake of it. Not regardless of who it is.
I think strategically, and I think his general. I will tell you, I do think he had some of the best people on his side, and I think they, like Rommel's a perfect example, right? I think, like Rommel kicked our ass. He just wasn't given the resources he needed to win our ass. Like I think there were they had the upper hand in a lot of ways.
Rommel was probably the best German general, but Rommel, I think Rommel has been, thanks to Goebbels, was surrounded with so much reverence that he's kind of overhyped, to be completely honest. And remember that a lot of what we get from Rommel is from Rommel's journals themselves. And Rommel was a very fucking narcissistic and very aware that he was writing his story in that journal. For history.
Okay, that is fair. But if you do look at combat tank movements, he dominated all of his part of Africa, and it was led up to I forget what division it was by the other leader, and he wasn't in charge of all of African operations.
Yep.
And I will say that is a fair statement.
It gives them an edge, but being the pioneers of something, you can have that edge, but after a while you lose that edge because everyone else like learns from what you have done and adapts.
Yeah.
Like you have your edge for half a decade, maybe a year and a half in wartime, and then the rest of the world adapted as what happened. Like the United States looked at Germany and were like, we need fucking mass-produced cheap tanks that we can use in a combined arms warfare system.
Right.
And what do? They pumped out the Sherman and they trained people on.
We need the cheapest, but can drop a massive payload.
They went and they built a combined like a fucking combined arms warfare.
Yeah.
And then went into Europe.
That is fair. That is very fair. That is very fair. Especially
Rommel's edge was lost at that point.
Like what would have happened is like he would have won Africa, but Patton would have just took all of his learnings of how we got their ass kicked and would have just kicked, like America would have just come back with a bigger force and dominant.
Had the industry to do it. They had Texas oil. They had Midwest. They had steel. They had the steel industry. They had the oil industry. They had the manufacturing of the fucking car industry in the Midwest. They had everything they needed to sustain. They had the resources. Like resources were never an issue for the United States. Not manpower. Not oil. Nothing was constraining them.
No.
And all it was constraining them initially was knowledge. And as soon as it's used against you, it's now in the public sphere.
Yeah.
Like that knowledge becomes public knowledge.
Yeah.
And they can use that knowledge and adapt themselves. And that's the thing is like Germany's edge was the fact that they were ahead of their time. But as soon as they lost a lot of their revolutionary minds because of their ideology, and they lost their edge in warfare because the world learned from them and adapted. And then unless they could keep revolutionizing, which is quite hard because we've gone 70 years, and aside from the generation of warfare we're in being a bunch of fucking psyops and private companies doing shit between each other and insurgencies, like conventional warfare hasn't really evolved much at all. Technology's gotten better, but the fundamentals of infantry supporting armor, and supporting infantry inversely, and air support supporting them, and
biggest thing that changed? The biggest thing that changed, and really the only thing that changed, is the PR. It's the PR spin of war, because up until that point, it was a pride of like, think of all the times London colonialized France, everyone in Europe, like going to war was like, yay, we're
Dirty
going to
country, it was
war. Like, we're going to
patriotic.
get more food. We're going to get more resources. We're going to go get more people, right? So up until World War One, that changed. And then after World War II, the mass destruction, the ideologies that came out of World War II, and dropping a fucking nuke, the PR spin of going to war was no longer this amazing thing for your country. Also, the firepower has turned from cannons and musket fire and swords to mass
No, I
bombs
think I
and
think no,
everything.
I think arguably your life expectancy in a modern conflict is better than a fucking Civil War one. Even though weapons have gotten better, like the doctrine has changed,
Yeah,
and emphasis on preservation of your own forces is the value in preserving your trained, experienced fighters is more appreciated than what it used to be. Like retraining a bunch of people and having fresh non-combat tested people, a bunch of them is less valuable than having a smaller group of better equipped, experienced fighters.
yeah. I mean,
And
the
and I think
technology
and I
and
think the,
special forces have and the training and everything and behind special forces, modern combat has changed that way. And I know Hammer brought up the drone, but like, yeah, like it's all between the PR spin of we're not going to war, but we can do a proxy war, right? I.e. Ukraine. We can go to a proxy war.
i.e. Syria, i.e. Ukraine,
Same
i.e.
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan in the 80s,
Yeah.
i.e. Vietnam, i.e. Angola,
Yep,
i.e.
Korea, everything, right? I mean, that's why I said I feel like the reason Ukraine is the way it is right now is just because the whole
That's the way
world
they've
is
spun it, though.
comfortable. We're comfortable.
They could have spun that as what like. I personally hoped that the United for this one instance, much like they did with Bosnia, where they're just like, this is wrong. We are going to go stop this. Like, it was like one of those things where it was like, it's pretty fucking clear cut. There's no murkiness with it. It's pretty clear cut which side's in the right, which side's in the wrong. Um, Much like, yeah, like Bosnia, Serbia. They were like, it's like, this is a genocide. You're in the wrong, Serbia. We're gonna go in and we're gonna fucking stop you.
Right.
Because it's the right thing to do for us as humanity. And it's I hoped that the United States was gonna put their foot down and say, this is wrong. We're gonna stop you. And the world would have probably just would have backed them. The world would have backed them. Other countries would have sent troops and forces, if need be, and supported them on their endeavor, right? And it would have almost put some faith and trust back in the United States as
Yeah.
foreign,
Global
foreign
peacekeeping and
global
yeah,
peacekeeping and foreign relations
sure.
image that has been so tarnished over the years.
Yeah.
Where it's like every war that the United States has gone into, aside from like the Bosnian Civil War, has been for their own ends, more or less, and
Yeah.
Afghanistan
And
to an
not
extent.
even
But
our
even
own
then,
ends, but to corporate to oil to the American
big oil,
oligarchs.
big oil,
Yeah,
to big oil,
to the
to big
American
oil, to
oligarchs.
weapons
Yeah,
manufacturers.
exactly.
Yeah, like it's to their benefit and
Yeah.
no one else's.
Our
And
oligarchs.
people see that now. People know that now. And people look at it and go, the big war machine, and they hate the big war machine. But but people don't look at war from the other flip side of there's a time where war is maybe necessary as the final stage of diplomacy, as a
Yeah.
final tool of diplomacy. And that, like, what was the saying? What was it, Valier? Was it Valier? Um, only sides both capable of war can ever attain peace. Like, or something like, I believe it's something like that.
I mean,
To be capable of peace, you have and there's the other one. It's like a peaceful person. A peaceful person is a person capable of extreme violence but chooses not to. A person who is not capable of violence is harmless. And it's like people have lost that. Yeah, both sides have to have something to lose, and it's like as soon as one rolls over, like that, you lose that. You lose that element.
that is why the greatest power is you need a nuke. your country needs a nuke. If you want to be a modern country that doesn't get fucked with, you have to have a nuke. You
And you
have to
have to
have a
be,
nuke.
but the thing is you have to be willing to fucking use that.
No, yeah.
You have
That's
to
what I'm
be willing
saying.
to flex that.
Yeah,
Like the United States had the opportunity at the start of this to go, this is wrong. We're going to be mobilizing forces. You can threaten us with nukes, but we will fucking nuke you back just as hard if you do. And proceed to push and because I mean shit, we saw what was happening to those Russian columns without fucking US air support. They didn't even have air superiority in the Ukraine, and they were losing fucking columns and columns because they were driving up highways in a single file to fucking anti-tank rockets.
right.
Imagine if you had B2s flying overhead with F-22s providing air superiority, and you were fucking bombing the living fuck out of Russian columns. They would have been pushed right back.
Yeah,
Real quick.
it would have been. Yeah, it would have been. It would have the walking with your tail between your legs and the mass destruction would have been far less had it would have been because you would have had true targeted strikes at that point because you see the Russians coming in, right? And so all of their helicopters and everything, like all of it would have been knocked out. And that's my biggest concern is just like I just my heart goes to Ukraine because it's just
and you look at the people that were volunteering, the foreigners that were volunteering to go fight for the Ukraine.
Yeah.
Like if you have that many people, if you have tens of thousands of people on their own dime traveling to Poland so they can walk across a border and fight for a country that's not theirs for no pay at risk of their own life, like I firmly believe that the public opinion of the United States people for sending their own troops over there to do it would have been fine. Like it would have been noble. It is noble.
Yeah.
But instead, like, they've just turned it into what they want, which is a big fucking money printing machine for the war machine at the cost of setting the same precedent for, like, say for example, like China's eyes were on this. China's looking at this and going, how's the US reacting to this?
Well,
because the US how the US reacts to this directly impacts what's the state of Taiwan, right?
Well, like, it's not just
the US
that.
puts their foot down and says this is fucking wrong and goes full force.
The thing is, though,
China might think twice about it.
The yuan is stronger because now they're building payment processing platforms for the Russian ruble, but the main source is no longer USD. It's the Chinese yuan or whatever it's called.
Yep.
So
the United States,
from a financial standpoint,
with the bullshit economics crap,
yeah,
they're undermining themselves in the long run.
And that's the real winner for China is another big country, because this is India. This is an India-China-Russia alliance. That Russia has ruble that is worth nothing because they can't do anything with it. So China said, "Fine, we'll back it with our money, and you can use ours as your now global exchange." And if people don't understand economy and everything in the world, that's the USD right now for most of the world. But the real winner, that's again kind of our last castle of America for imperialism, is like, you have to use our money, if so facto. That's why you rely on this country. And that's what China's been eyeing. And this is a big opportunity. This is a big opening to start to change that. And also, most of the world cares about green tech, and most of the world cares about things that China is doing with the new Silk Road, right? So the fact that they're turning some countries to their financial system, that opens paths and it creates the platforms that the EU or more of the EU could do the same thing, right? So I think as a long-term, the problem is with America, we can't ever look past 4 years. China has had the same financial plan for like 30 years and it's paying off big, but they're building long-term strategy here. And we are, every 4 years, we've fucking flip everything around and say like, oh, that person was an idiot, and they
the thing is that they don't look at the future and the long term of the country. They look at the initial benefits for the corporations, and that's the problem. It's like the United States is throwing away all of their gains by doing what they're doing now.
Yeah.
Like if you put your foot down, you intervene militarily, you don't economically sanction as hard, you just fucking pound them with your fist. You maintain the US dollar being the global currency. The economics thing will be a bit fucky because of the war, but after it's won, which they would win, everything would settle back to normal where the United States is back again as the status quo de facto center of global trade, right? Like you're handing over your power to China even more by doing this. Also, you can sell some javelins. Congratulations.
Right, and that's we're making the problem, the real problem here is it's the eyes on the javelins, and it's selling more F-22s, and it's selling some more helicopters, and it's selling all of our cruise missiles.
They
right?
want F-35s and F-18s and F-15s. The F-22s out of production now. No,
it was the F-15. I think the F-15s were the big. I think a big order was placed with F-15s. But
F-22s are shit. Aren't they not even producing like a large number of spare parts for them anymore? Isn't it like fucking?
I think it's been sunset. Was it F-30? I think it was the F-35 that they placed a bunch of order.
Yeah, I believe the F-22 is no longer being supported. I believe the F-22 is in the same boat as the 18.
Yeah, so Germany was the one that was going to buy the F-35s.
Are the F-22 still getting parts support from Lockheed, though?
I don't think so.
I know they're not producing any more of them.
Yeah.
I know they're not producing any more airframes. But what I'm wondering is, are they producing spare parts? Because the 18 still to this day, just for like the last 20 years or 15 years, has been flying on scavenged parts from other airframes rather than replacement parts.
But like the problem is America's, and again, this is what happens when our oligarchs are running the show, which no one wants to talk about, but it's about selling F-35s, and it's about selling the javelins, and it's the Bayraktars, seeing how also the power of drones, because we haven't usually sold a whole lot of drones, but seeing the Bayraktars out there, everyone understands now the power of drones, and now that I'm sure sales of that go up, right? But the real problem is the problem is American financials get shifted so fast because it goes from one regime to the next regime, right? One president to the next president, and everything can get disheveled. So we can't ever, on the best case scenario, we can't ever look 8 years past what we're doing. But in reality, it's usually 4 years, because even if they get reelected, shit gets fucky. They have different people, other priorities get put into place because the people that paid for that election cycle are different.
Yeah, so, I agree to an extent, but I want to say, like, how much of the time do people worry about the whole this gets changed, that gets changed, but everything's somehow, I'm not trying to sound like a fucking tinfoil hat wearer here. All this change in political parties back and forth, but everything still just stays the same. The same policies get enacted. The same strategies of spending and defense, use of defense is enacted. Everything kind of fucking stays the same. The MO is the same.
That's because the same people are always in power. But if China, as pendulum, again, if this Chinese payment system that they're working with Russia, and if that keeps getting momentum, and like I said, China has great relations right now with a lot of Europe and Africa because of the new Silk Road, and because they're all on board with green tech, and like the new industrial revolution is happening, and we had a president who not only said we're not going to be a part of that new industrial revolution, we're going to double down and try to triple down on the old industrial revolution.
And that's America, and this is make them money.
And this is the problem of America right now: is the world wants to be here. We have leaders that want to be here because our oligarchs are over here, right? Even when Saudi Arabia, all their investments are going over here to green tech. You need to move. You need to go. Right now is not the time to contemplate. Now is the time to execute. or else you get left behind, like in the first industrial rev. Like anyone that wasn't part of the most recent industrial revolution, the second one, right? Your economy is now second or third tier, and that's what we're running. We're running an issue of that in America, and my concern is by the time we're stupid enough to that the mass populace want to get on board, the West was already won. You know, the battle was already fought. We already lost it, and it's too late to come back full force from that.
Yeah, I think yeah, like the current the powers that be don't really care for a war because it does means they get all the benefits they
Right.
get with the system they have. They get all the benefits financially without the PR that they have to deal with. And I think the modern generation has lost the stomach for it because they've been partially because all that they've seen is them getting fucking screwed over
True.
by
Yeah.
those same
I mean,
powers that be
100%.
on bullshit wars. But they,
100%.
for the most part, have lost the stomach for war.
Well, because it's
So
our friends that fought it, right? It's
yeah,
our friends that come home with PTSD, and then it's our
yeah.
friends and family that don't get the
Yeah.
veteran care that they need.
But I
because
still think
veterans are fucked.
But I still think but people still did that back in like World War One, World War Two. People who went to Bosnia, like, people still went to those things and still came back with those things,
Well,
right?
here's the difference, though.
But the cost felt worth it to a lot of them.
Well,
compared to others.
But here's the thing. I think the other part, it's very easy to push all of that aside because back then, the only people you spoke to were in your community. And there were probably a lot of communities in America that didn't have to see that or to have that conversation. This is our community. This is our community. Any given moment, you can see how fucked up something is. And especially when it comes to your friends, and people can be very vocal and tell you very easily, I am struggling because my leg was blown off and I have PTSD, you know? So it's not just your friends and family, and it's not just one isolated incident too, right? Back then it might be John, and John had a rough time with the war or whatever, or hasn't been the same since the war or since Nam or whatever. But this and communication, we're a very global community now. Even if you want to look nationally, you have a very good insight of the people around you and struggles that are happening, right? And I think that is a big part of it. Is communication is drastically different than back then.
Yeah, but I'm trying to answer. Yeah, I think people. Yeah, I get what you mean. But I still think. I think that people have been burned too many times recently, to where
100%.
where they were willing to make that sacrifice, like the whole sacrifice to serve your country. Like people were still willing to make that sacrifice because they believed in the higher cause and it was right, and doing the thing that was right. Like how many people went into Iraq because they believed it was right, and dealt with that things because they thought it was right,
Right.
and then they come out the end of it and they just realize it's all bullshit to make
Yeah.
money, and that's what fucks them up more, I think.
100%.
Was that they felt like it was in Afghanistan. They went through all of that fighting to give it back to the Taliban, and they felt like it was a waste of their friends' lives, their lives, and everything else. Whereas, like, you go into a fucking genocide situation and you stop it, like, you don't walk away from that thinking that you wasted what you went through was not
the
worth
cost.
it.
Yeah, the cost wasn't.
Like
yeah,
the cost was worth it. Like if you go into Ukraine and you stop those people from getting fucked over by Russia, like you and stop the shit that's happening, like I would say a large number of people would feel like it, even though the shit that they've had to go deal with, that it was worth it. The friends they lost, the mental shit they've gone through, that a lot of them would still feel like it was worth it. But I feel like they've been burned so many times that people have lost the willingness to just do it.
Yeah, I think that's that's spot on.
So like we're in a situation where the people aren't willing to say we need to really go in and do something. So Congress is never going to fucking declare war on Russia because of it.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, because it doesn't have the public sentiment. It's not
the public sentiment is anti-war. We've got a generation of people who aren't willing to go and make that sacrifice because they've seen other people get burned, and we have a system in which the military-industrial complex still makes a bunch of fucking money.
Right. That's
regardless of the outcome.
Right. It doesn't.
So, like,
and
the outcome we have now.
Yeah.
None of the downsides for them. Like, this will never change. Like, the humanitarian side of militaries will never be embraced properly again until the people stand up and say, fucking do something.
Yeah.
Like, change what you're doing. Like, we and intervene in the things that are meant to be intervened in.
Yeah.
I
again, we mentioned military industrial complex. It's like, it goes a lot, but at least for America, it goes back to a lot of corporate lobbying, right? It goes back to like, it's like all of this is like intertwined, right? We mentioned financials and we mentioned like long-term growth strategy of America, military. It all goes to corporate lobbying, right? And that's the problem, is you have there's so much money, there's so much power from corporate lobbies, which in this case is heavily Lockheed Martin and the Raytheons of the world and Northrop of the world.
Well, the fact that you have fucking senior generals in your military who are also board members for Raytheon and Lockheed Martin is a little bit fucking a bit of a conflict of interest, no?
Or the moment that they're not in that position, they then become a board member or get a super cushy job consulting for them, and consulting for them is being on the Bahamas, just hanging out.
Hey, what do you think of this new fucking plane design?
Yeah, great.
This is what it's capable of. Yeah,
needs more guns.
I can get in contact with my buddy who's in charge of the acquisitions and tell him about it. Yeah. They might not have even known this was even existing, but now that they might know it's existing, it might fuel the desire for some purchases.
Yeah, or hey, you're about to get rid of this stockpile because it's past date or it's out of tech. You're about to place a new order for some ships. What have you called your buddy, who's the guy placing that order, can make the decision, and why don't you put him in contact with us? And it's like, all right,
why don't you put him in contact with us?
Check.
We definitely will not be bribing you. No bribes will be passed here.
No, that's a consulting fee. That's a consulting fee. Yeah.
If you have to be friends with us after the fact and we give you a nice cushy job like your buddy here, well, that's just fucking coincidence.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we'll send him. He wants I heard he wants to move to this place with a bigger house. Yeah, the thing is, corporate housing.
The only people who lose with the people saying we will stop this shit and go and actually stop it, and not just do what we always do, is the White House. The White House is the only side that loses there.
Yeah,
like the military-industrial complex wins.
Oh yeah,
the people the people of the Ukraine win. The people of the United States as a country, it kind of wins because it regains its peacekeeper of the world status and not warmongering, money grabbing oil.
Ukraine's still the loser here.
The Ukraine's already fucking lost, but they lose less. They lose less than what they would have. They lose with the other two scenarios of Russia taking them over or being in debt to being fucked up from a protracted war and debt for all the weapons they're having to buy. Like, if the United States invades, it's on the United States' dime. It's not on Ukraine's dime.
Yeah.
And the man cost and the financial cost is put onto the United States.
Right.
Because with the way that it currently is, the United States incurs no man cost, no financial cost for this situation. They just profit from it.
Yeah. They also have no cost of
PR either. Well, they don't have to deal with PR much.
The other part is just, when it's all said and done, you already have fragmented military groups in the Ukraine with different ideological thoughts. And
that's just standard Russian. That's just standard Soviet era playbook. That's standard Soviet era playbook. They did it with fucking God, what was it? It was Czechoslovakia. They did it with Czechoslovakia. What do you do
Yeah,
when you want to take a country that doesn't want to give you? You get a whole bunch of Russians to mass migrate into parts of that country, and then have pro-Russian sentiment. So then when the tanks roll on in, it's welcoming our Russian brethren and not a fucking
yeah,
invasion.
but
And they
I'm
did the same thing with Crimea as well. It's straight out of the Soviet handbook. It's straight out of the Soviet
well.
fucking
My bigger
invasion
concern
handbook.
is, for instance, when the most recent LAWs were sent, the Azov battalion got them first and the training for them first. So you have a militant Nazi group that is it's not the whole military of Ukraine, right? But it is enough it's their special forces, right? It's one of their special forces units that have since the beginning of all this gotten special training on supply chain disruptment and basically how to fight the Russians, and they've been given the right equipment to do it. And then you're going to have this is what I think about is you're then going to have a post-war Ukraine, and what happens to all of these groups, especially if one wants to just say like, "Hey, fuck the president" or whatnot, right?
And
Like,
yeah,
what's
and
the
it's- and all
de-arming?
of
What's
this-
the de-arming strategy? Because it's very easy to get arms
Yeah.
into people, especially that are fighting for their freedom, which
But
I
what happens
100% get.
afterwards?
But what happens with all those LAWs and all of the guns, and if we send in more armor or if we do send in planes, like what happens to those? And
Exactly.
again, and this is why I say the biggest loser of all this
Is Ukraine.
is Ukraine, obviously, right? And I don't think anyone will disagree with that from the surface level of they're dying, they are getting bombs dropped on them, they are having
But the
armed
long term they
forces
lose
fighting
as
them.
well.
And that's to me the long term, and this is why I look at Afghanistan, because Afghanistan at the time, everyone said they were winning because the CIA was giving them surface to air missiles and fucking all of the right things to fight the Russians, but then they had a war-torn country in shambles.
And a power vacuum and
you had a militant
extremist group, yeah,
that was trained by the CIA to fight supply chain, was taught how to use weapons, and was taught how to disrupt a large-scale military operation and win.
Yeah.
And also the money to do that. And then a little bit more money and a little bit more money because the CIA and everyone kept skimming it more. So when you were given this much of an arms package, they got this much, which was already, they only needed this much. So they were get flushed with cash, training, and they themselves were a extremist group who then used their war-torn country and then could use sentiment because we fucked them, which we did. Hey, like, that's on us. And eventually we reaped what we sowed there, right? America, like, you want to play the game. Well, 9/11 happened. And instead of us learning and understanding pain and human loss, what do? Same fucking shit. We go and do the same because, again, it's the military industrial complex. Someone has to make their paycheck. So we spin it all up and do the same thing all over again. And the craziest part, the Taliban was fragmented, broken, and the moment we stepped foot, said, we'll give you bin Laden. We'll give you bin Laden if it is to a mutual, like, tribunal court. And we said, no, fuck you, because that wasn't ever the goal. That goal was never just to get bin Laden. And then
I mean, it was, but the US wanted carte blanche on what happened to bin Laden.
Well, but also
they didn't want a fucking tribunal court.
No, but but then,
and it was the same thing with like Saddam when the people were like, when the Revolutionary Guard were like, we'll work with you,
right? But
we can work with you to stabilize the country once Saddam's gone,
right?
And instead, the United States was like, fuck you. We're the winners.
Yeah.
You don't get to say this.
Yeah,
and
it's our oil now. It's our oil now. So we're going to
Yeah,
get
that
much
country
oil
now.
and gold, and then well, that's our oil now. And we're going to bring in our people, of course, and our companies and corporations, and we're going to go get that. And then again, we go back to like the human loss element. The people there went through human loss. And then you go to our soldiers who are now dying, to insurgents they're defending their country, right? And they've been radicalized, or they're just it's not even radicalized. It's if someone drops a drone strike on your neighbor's house and your friends and family die, well, that is the bad guy, right? That drone in the sky, or that tank, or that soldier that shot your brother, well, they are the bad guy. And now you have an American who lost their warfighter, their buddy in arms, because they were a private security guard for Shell or whoever, right? That's where, again, you talk about that global distrust of war. It's like none of those things should have happened, right? None of that was necessary
because it was misused. Because it was misused. It was like the trust of the people and the ideals of war were intentionally drummed up and misused to drag you into a situation where a select few made a bunch of money. But now, like, we've got the same situation. Like with Ukraine, it's going to be the same thing. Whereas, had the United States intervened, it's their weapons, it's their money, it's not the Ukraine's money. The military-industrial complex still keeps fucking churning.
Yeah.
Like, it's still going to keep churning because you've still got a war that you've got to go fight with your own troops. So that's a win for the military-industrial complex wins regardless. However, once the war is over, and Ukraine is a free sovereign nation again, you don't have all these armed factions everywhere, because when you pull out your arms, you withdraw your shit with you. That gets all taken away with you.
Yeah.
So you don't have all these armed factions there.
You have not a single owner of that. The owner of them is Ukraine, and it's specifically not Ukraine. It is the person holding those arms and holding those weapon caches, and who's holding the strongholds and the torn in defensive points. Well, possession becomes 9/10 of the law, and that's just I believe,
that's
my biggest concern of all of this.
Better for Ukraine in the long run is if the United States put their foot down, but they haven't, and it's sad. I was so disheartened. I was like, this is the chance for the US to redeem themselves in the eyes of the world and do something that's fucking right for once, and they did the same bullshit that they always do.
And for the average citizen, the average person just trying to the average kid just trying to go to school and play video games and have fun, I feel for them, and I feel for the average people, because now, like, will it ever be the same, you know? And I think long term, if there's one thing I've learned in history, it's having a fragmented country with a lot of arms and people with very strong ideological points of view in life.
It doesn't end well.
It's never ended well. And that's exactly what's happening. And the problem is the Western world, who gave them all that, they don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck. The only time they give a fuck is if then there is a strike on America or Israel or something with those weapons, or those people that we created the mess. You know, you create a mess, you didn't clean it, now you got cockroaches and bugs and everything because you just left food everywhere. Whatever is a terrible way to explain it, but I don't know. The longer this goes on and the actions that keep happening, it's like, oh, it's a no fucking brainer, because this is how the world's operated since post World War II. And the people at the top keep making more money, as they always have, so they're happy. And of course, that's why everyone is doing what they're doing. But it's another country that is in shambles. It's another country that's going to have broken schools and broken homes and people that have lost everything and continue to lose. And what who's going to help them? What happens next? And the only and this is fucked up, but the only hope is, I guess, if Western intervention is allowed from Russia, well, maybe there will be rebuilding and a little bit of TLC, because there's so much oil there and resources there that Shell wants it, that maybe we'll actually do some of the
It's
right
also
thing right there.
the big thing is the LNG. The LNG is very, very big.
Yeah.
A very big factor.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of, I mean, they have a lot of oil reserves. And that's, if you guys don't know really the history there, that's why the initial invasion happened in 2014, is American companies like Shell were working with Ukraine of extracting them. And it would have taken,
And the pro-Russian leader that was
yeah,
in there that
the puppet.
the way that the puppet that they weaseled their way into with political finagling
is gone.
Was overthrown by a uprising of the people, which
CIA has never done that before.
That's definitely not a special. Every fucking intelligence organization has their signature specialty.
I know.
Mossad is fucking assassination and sabotage. The Russians is deep cover operatives.
Yeah.
The United States is coups.
The CIA loves a coup. The CIA loves a good old coup. A good old coup feels good.
They're good at their coups. The Russians, they're good at their fucking sleeper agents.
Yeah.
And the Mossad's really good at killing people in foreign nations without getting caught.
And so, you look at again what has happened.
So Russia was pissed off with that.
Right. So they invade and they take Crimea, because Crimea is like, they don't care. Like, they're like, fine, we're Russian, we're Ukraine, we're whatever, which means they control the Black Sea and they get all the oil reserves in the Black Sea, and they cut off the pipelines and the different resources and ways out really of Ukraine, and a lot of the footholds that Ukraine was building with Shell, because they needed a way to really export that oil, which the Black Sea's cut off now. So you cut off the Western corporations, which, definitely don't ever benefit from CIA intervention. But
no, not at all. They definitely don't have a relationship together of like giving cover IDs to operatives or anything like that. No, not at all.
Yeah, and so now then there's fighting again. Ukrainian lives are lost since 2014. Western countries give training for doomsday. Doomsday happens, and a main special forces battalion are Nazis, and you're having one of, if not the largest, pouring of guns and weapons and armaments from all sides go into a country.
Well, and I think, and the whole thing is we keep looping back to this way, because it's like we have the public sentiment is the whole anti-war movement just keeps getting stronger with every time they fuck around with, like, I think the sentiment needs to change from anti-war to pro the right wars and anti the wrong ones. Like, back to the way it used to be, where a country would be like, this would go to war for a reason that they believed was right, or it was right, or the world believed it was right, and would stay out of things that were, at least in an official capacity, out of things that weren't their business. Like, did Britain and Germany fuck with Spain's civil war? Yeah, of course, but they didn't intervene so heavily and overtly in those sorts of things. And then when it was like, no, you're not going to invade this part of this country, we will put our foot down if you do, and putting their foot down when they did, it was like this it was the right reasons to do things,
right?
And when it was a wrong reason, the public was like, they didn't do it because they knew the public was like, no, Like, whereas now it's like any war, regardless of whether it's for the long term betterment of the world or not, is like sometimes it's better just to rip the band-aid off.
Yeah.
If this situation's just gonna fucking slow burn until the whole thing's burned down, or you can kill the fire with an explosion and save half the building or whatever. Like, it's probably better to do that than it is to let it just fucking, like, people. Yeah, it's like the anti-war sentiment is what's stopping this, and the military-industrial complex doesn't give a shit because they make their money regardless.
Well, they want it. The wheels keep turning.
The wheels will always keep turning, but it's like until people stop. Like, in the way that the United States is so now, it's so black and white. Everyone is so polarized over shit that it's like both sides are just as fucking ridiculous as the other. That it's like, because but like individual thought has become a fucking gone to the back burner because of Twitter and the mainstream media machine. It's like everything's either like everything's so fucking polarized that it's like you can't have an opinion that like you fit yourself into your box. Like, you're either in the left side box or the right side box. And it's like there are a small group of individuals who are like, yes, I'm for individual rights and individual firearm ownership and individual freedoms of marriage or whatever, or drug use. It's like, and then but it's like very few people can do that. They conform to the polarized things, and it's like one side's like, yeah, all for service and foreign intervention, regardless of whether it's properly a war you mean to be intervening in. And then you've got the other side that's very, very anti-war, even though they're secretly pro-war and they just funnel a bunch of money into drone programs and other shit to keep the money flowing in the war machine. But they're anti-war and they're anti-interventionist on the other side. And it's like, why can't we just go back to where it was, where like there were some things that, regardless of political ideology, were kind of just like this is right, this is wrong, and we can go back to individual thought. And when we vote based on not based on party affiliation, but based on beliefs.
Yeah,
on things.
That's the
like
that's the big kicker right now. Is it's like you don't cross party lines, but it's really stupid because that is how you end up in the mess we're in, because
people just need to wake up from it, though, because the whole thing is the United States system is so fucked and corrupt. The best thing they can do is have them just focused on each other and how much they fucking hate each other. Yeah. Because as soon as they realize that
the powers
people aren't so different, and the powers that be have drummed them up against each other, so they can be distracted, and they look and see at the system that they've really got and what it's become from what they believe it is and what they're told it is, they'd be fucked, and the people of the powers that be would lose that power.
You know, my favorite thing, and I put quotations, that's not my favorite thing at all, but I've always said this argument, because you mentioned gun ownership, and when you look at gun deaths in America, there are a lot, and it's a very polarized argument and conversation. And the moment Ukraine happened, everyone was like, this is why I need my AR-15, right? To use like the classic example. My argument has always been, though, that if the government ever wanted you dead, you would need surface to air, you would need special forces training, you would need a drone.
I disagree. The United States lost a war against a bunch of men in man jammies with 50-year-old AKs. So I'm sorry, but I disagree. I think it's impossible to win an insurgent. I reckon it's impossible to win as a counterinsurgency force. It is impossible in the long run to win.
But the goal was never to win that. The goal was never to win that. The goal was to get as much of all the resources and make all the people their money and then get the fuck out. That was never the objective.
But the thing is, if the government wanted you dead, like you don't. Like a insurgency in the United States, like if it would as long as the people are armed, it will never win. It will never succeed because of that sole thing.
Well,
sure, the money printer's going to keep going and the war machine's going to keep going, but it's always going to keep going.
But my point was, if the government ever wanted you dead, they would drop a drone on you. So you would need something to use. You would need something to counter that. They'll send tier 1 operators in the dark to kill you.
The whole
right?
sentiment of that thing though is not about any individual person, but the people but the citizenry as a collective.
Yeah, but what Ukraine proved was my argument stands tried and true, that if you had to defend your country, those are the real. That's what took out the columns. That's what took out the helicopters transporting units. That's the real resistance and the real fighting, and the real reason Ukraine has been so successful is because they had the right training. They had tier 1 operators. They had Bayraktars fucking from the sky. We're able to use all of these things that your average person does not have, and your average person needs to have to effectively
Yes.
repel a military invasion, invasion.
But you're also making that assumption that the citizenry of the United States is entirely basic citizenry. But the reality of the situation is, how many of those same advocates for like 2A and gun ownership are ex-military, former law enforcement, former military?
A percentage.
How many of the plethora of organizations which provide training to civilians are run by former SEALs, former Delta, former SEALs, former CAG, former Green Berets.
Sure.
You have a group of people who, if push came to shove and it came to a situation where you needed to repel a foreign force, which let's get this straight, the United States is probably the hardest country in this world to invade. Period.
Yeah. Good luck.
You would have those very same people would be able to supply that training, to supply that knowledge, would be able to make IEDs and take out columns of things rolling through with some fucking fertilizer bombs on a bridge, and et cetera.
But that's my point is, with those people, the argument of what you need changes, right? But my whole sentiment is, the fact is, everyone was like, small arms fire was the reason that Ukraine repelled this country, the Russian forces, and in reality, no, it was
no. But it's not one specific thing. But that's the thing, is like, you remove the 2A, the whole.
It's
the
not
whole
you
thing
don't
falls
no
apart.
no you don't remove 2A. But the fact is, you can't. I've talked about this before, but you can't do a study in America of the effects of any sort of gun violence if it has a negative connotation that guns are a problem. A study can't be federally funded. So you can't get federal funding if you think your study, if that's the end result. Like, that's fucked. Like, why does that rule exist? That'd be like saying, hey, if you have a study that cancer is bad, we're not going to give you any money to study cancer. Right? That's fucked.
I think it's a mental health and societal problem. I think guns are.
I'm not saying that either, but here's the problem. The same people that are pushing and shoving, saying it's a mental health problem, they think that the one guy that wants to give universal health care is the devil. So that's
they're fucking idiots.
No,
they're fucking idiots.
But
a rational person would look at it and say, this is an underlying mental health and societal issue. We fucking hate each other because we've been turned against each other,
right?
And we have a lack of a mental health system, and we treat everyone with mistrust. And we're all fucking armed.
Thank you. I didn't know it was any study. I thought
you still take away the arms from that problem.
Result.
You've still got a fucking problem. Like, you can take away the guns, you still got a fucking problem. It's like, look at London. It's like, instead of fucking shooting each other, they're just going to start stabbing each other and running each other over with cars and chucking acid on people.
But we have all those too. But we have all those too on top of guns. right?
But it's like you remove the underlying issue of like Switzerland. There are a whole bunch of and Israel, Switzerland and Israel. People are fucking just as probably per head of capita armed to the teeth, right? They've all had military training. They're all fucking got fucking SIGs in their ward in their safes at home because that's what they're required to do as reservists, mandatory reservists, right? But despite all of these guns being everywhere, they're not fucking going around. They're not mass shootings left, right, and center because they're happy. Their mental health system, their socioeconomic issues are met. Their mental health issues are met. They're happy people that go about their life, that 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 go it, that do their thing without killing each other. So it's like rather than going and saying the guns are the problem, it's just going to be another fucking issue. Like why treat the symptom when you can treat the underlying cause? And the underlying cause is socioeconomic and mental health and a whole bunch of other issues. That when you address these things first, substantial gains will be made. Because isn't that gun death stat include suicides?
It depends. The stats will break out, and I want to also forewarn when a lot of these stats come, especially when we start talking about suicide and homicide, they come from law enforcement, and that is a whole infinite docu-series worth of information of how reliable and upstanding that information is. But there normally is between a breakout of homicide, suicide, and a lot of the statistics at least break out what happened there.
Yeah, homicide, suicide, justified shooting. Because let's not forget
that self-defense, actual self-defense,
and justified shooting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But statistics do break out those.
Yeah, and there's also the other one. Firearms used. Firearms are used but not like fired. In deterrence.
Yeah.
How often is firearms used to deter crime? It's like you fix those underlying issues in the United States. People, because like over time, gun restrictions have gotten tougher, right? But for some reason, yeah, of course they have.
Okay, in time. Okay, if you want to talk, yes.
If you want to talk from like 1950s, 1950s United States, right?
Okay.
United States was in its was like the American family was happy, right? There was obviously the civil rights issue,
sure,
but we're just talking about general sentiment of the citizenry.
Yeah,
they were happy, but despite that fact, you could still go and buy a machine gun. Anyone could buy a machine gun in the United States at that point in time, but you still didn't have bloody mass shootings left, right, and center. So like the sentiment, like economically, the United States was at its peak. Happiness, everyone was at their peak, and gun violence, like and gun ownership, and like gun restrictions were at their lowest, and yet it's regarded as a time where things were better. So, what's changed? Like, if you've gone and added more gun restrictions, but then socioeconomically socioeconomically the country is worse. Socially the country is worse.
There's a lot that's changed though. One, the average time for a gun to go legally purchased to, let's say, black market is usually 13 years. So think about the lag time. Guns have evolved, right? Since, let's say, the 50s. Right. Gold standard at the time was an M16. Think of the evolution of weaponry. That has changed. So rate of fires have changed. Accuracy has changed. Range, caliber of weapon, that has changed. The other thing is gun control started because America's racist. That's what, like, also.
Oh yeah.
That's
well,
our roots of gun control are because black people
out of black hands.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just like, one, war on drugs has happened, gang violence subsequently because of war on drugs. So like a lot of things have intertwined, but I will say there is a general sentiment. I would say that at least a fair amount of Americans understand that we have a problem, right? Like your children are like, I in school didn't have to do an active shooter training drill. That's now standard practice in school. Like if I was a parent, like I'd be heartbroken if my kid had to do that. And I know that if I have a kid at this point, they're going to have an active shooter drill. And like mentally, what that does, like if I was fucking 7 years old in an active shooter drill, like, okay, pretend that this man is going to shoot at us. That's like, we can do better, right? If I didn't have to do that, but kids nowadays, because it's such a it's such a thing. It's so commonplace. You know, I was a kid when Columbine happened. That was like the first big one, but I never had to do what I had to live through was in middle school 9/11.
And even after Columbine, there was a big lull. Like Columbine was one of those like
it was because it was shot.
It was
same,
it was one of those. It was one of those things that like shit like that. It as bad as it is to say, it just fucking happens. Like the mosque shooting in Christchurch, the fucking attacks in Europe, like Columbine, all of these active shooter things. There are just fucking cases where nut jobs will just do it. Yeah, and it just happens.
I would also say
before that we had one in the 90s that was a small buttfuck town down out of Dunedin called Aramoana, where one resident went ballistic and started shooting everyone in the town.
Not every kid.
And that was
not
long after the Port
but even
Arthur,
then, now you have a generation that's numb to
mass shooting in
being worried they're going to
Australia.
get shot at.
Think
about that long term.
We, despite our gun laws very seldom changed too much after that. Still needed licenses and all that, but despite the fact that there was still just as many, if not more, modern guns in the hands of people in this country, we didn't have another mass shooting until a person dead set on doing what he was doing from another country came here and did what he did. Like, it's like shit just happens. But it's like it's getting worse, and it's fucked up. It's like it's a symptom of other underlying issues, and it's like it's not going to solve the problem in the long run. Like the fucking Oklahoma bombing. The was it the FBI building?
Yeah, it was the FBI
in Oklahoma.
Building. I'm pretty sure.
Oklahoma FBI building.
Yeah,
the Oklahoma FBI building, a city FBI building that got bombed. It was bombed, not shot. Like, and again, it was a symptom of fucked up people not getting the help that they need and society being the issue, and that was just the byproduct of it. It's like you can talk about the debate shouldn't be about gun control, not yet anyway. It's like we need to address the underlying issues. If we have a society where mental health issues are at their we get on top of mental health, we get on top of socioeconomic issues, like you get to deal with poverty in the United States, deal with mental health issues in the United States, deal with these things first, and gun violence and gang warfare is still fucking
education
up there.
education
and education
opportunity that exists for poor people.
Yep, education and opportunity,
things that the war on drugs fucked.
Yep, if we fix that
and
damage,
still fucked. Yeah.
If we fix that damage and there's still fucking school shootings left, right, and center, then we start addressing that thing. But it's like until we address the underlying issues that are the main causes before that person picks up that gun, then you can take the gun away. They're just going to pick up something else, and you're going to have the same fucking problem. So it's like address that issue first before we start.
Unless, but I will say, okay, if you look at the UK, it's not like everyone's throwing a pipe bomb around, right? So it's not like it's not when you at least, and again,
what do you mean? What do you mean? The fucking Manchester bombing was not too long ago.
But what I'm saying is, you have more knife fights, you have more hand-to-hand combat, they are grabbing other weapons, but it's not like they not escalation. I know they have guns.
But they still have guns.
I know, but it's not.
The only people that have guns are the ones that have black market Glocks and stolen police weapons.
Which is again, and that's usually connected to organized crime or my point is though, there are steps you can take to where it doesn't escalate to something worse. And like we're at that point where you have to de-escalate a problem, and we have a problem. But there's a lot of people in America that refuse to say that there is even a problem that exists.
And then you have the other side to say that the problem is one thing that it isn't really a problem. Like the guns aren't the problem, so to speak. It's a whole lot of other issues. The guns may be a part of the problem, but they're not the entire problem. You got one side saying the guns aren't the problem. You got the other side saying the guns are the problem. And
well, you have three sides. You have three sides. One, that guns are no problem at all. And then you have one problem that says we need to get rid of guns. And then you have one understanding side that there is a problem that is layered with several other factors.
You have a violence and a death problem as opposed to a gun problem. And it's based on other factors. Yeah.
Bullets are grind said in chat. You're both talking to your assumptions. There is data points to solutions to the gun violence problems in America. No one gains. I think the problem with that is I've seen a lot of conflicting information of how to solve it. I haven't seen a very clear path. And I say more clear path of you have to vote. Concealable guns are clearly the problem for homicides, but even more for suicides. Rifles, all the types, are pretty irrelevant.
Yeah. In terms of, if you're talking about homicides,
right? But those are
suicides,
and those are the biggest. Those are the ones that will be fought pretty much to the bitter end of gun control. When we talk about gun control, we talk about issues, right? Because if anything were to happen, it would have to go to a vote. And you'd have to get the American people. One, it would take a lot to get a vote because, again, there's a lot of people that fight that.
You're never going to agree. You would fragment into unions and confederacies again if you were to do that. Like, that's the thing, is as soon as you start going after First and Second Amendments like that hard, it's like it's such a divisive thing that the United States would no longer be united.
Yeah. Unless
that's the reality.
Unless the Black Panthers have guns and are exercising their First Amendment rights to protect their communities, then California and Ronald Reagan will be like, we need gun control. I love to bring it up on that.
And even before that, it was like, oh, what's that? These black people can't have guns. Yeah, no, slaves can't have guns. But that black guy, but that black guy says he's not a slave. Oh no, he's not. He's not a slave. But so that means he can buy a gun. Yeah. Well, let's fucking stop that. Let's pass some fucked up laws so this motherfucker, who's, despite the fact that he's now a free man and a citizen, can't own a fucking gun because we can't have him owning a gun. And that's where it all fucking started.
Yeah. I think of modern gun control policy. I laugh because everyone, being born and raised in California, everyone at least on the right likes to blame the Democrats for gun control, when in reality, California had its biggest start of gun control and legislation was under Reagan, Republicans, and the NRA. And their only reason why is because the Black Panthers wanted to protect their communities because we were in the midst of lots of fucked up things in this country. And, they didn't like that.
Injustice is happening to their communities. No, and they wanted to take a stand, as is the American way.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to ignore chat. It's hard to throw in lots of the conversation points, but I know there's Cheekster and I are both aware there is a lot of data. There's a lot of things out there. I don't think either one of us, I'll speak for me. I won't speak for Cheekster. There are problems. America has a lot of problems. My favorite thing to the gun control argument, though, is the same people that say it's not a gun problem, it's a people problem. We have mental health issues. Like the biggest probably advocates of that, of like, don't touch my guns. You have to solve people problems, are the biggest ones against universal health care, are the biggest ones and most vocal ones against affordable ways to be a healthy person. They're against solving poverty. They're against solving those core issues. So you have a group that is adamant to not change one thing, and
they're
then
right, but they're also wrong.
Right,
they're right, but they're also wrong.
Right. And
That's
so
pretty
then
much what you're
but
saying.
then they're like, they're super pounding their chest to, we will never give up this portion of a liberty. Because again, we don't have to say all guns. They're to Built to Grind's point in chat, there are specific things that are the biggest kind of offenders in this situation. And so if we were to tackle certain things, they would say, no, don't you dare do it. But then the flip side of that is, well, we need to fix then those other things. And they're the biggest ones to say, no, don't you fucking dare do that. And they're, it's also, I think, one of a lot of the arguments is there's no compromise now. Well, it's like, there's no compromise. So
Honestly,
we just have people dying in America or
the
incarcerated in America.
I'm going to say it's probably the people with the best side of causing the change in this dynamic is the left, is the political left. The political left, if they just stop going after guns and enacting their healthcare policies and what they do, and show that the beneficial sides of what they're pushing without pushing the gun control element and lowering their crime rates that way, it will have a roll-on effect to the political right.
I mean, the problem is, you look at Bernie,
because the right's never gonna fucking talk about those issues, and look at those issues. If they see you as the polar opposite and you act like the polar opposite, if you're gonna act like the polar opposite to the people who are wrong but also right, or right about one thing but wrong about so many others, then you are just as right about a lot of things and just as wrong about the other things. So you're just as fucking bad and you're not resolving the issue. But I think from a stance of change, I think it's easy. I think it's better to push the battles that they're pushing a lot more. I'm from a left. I was raised left leaning. I don't even know what I am anymore. People would call me a right winger, but I'm not even a fucking right winger. I'm like a liberal libertarian sort of fucking person.
Well, I will say, I think depending where you are, because you're in a different country, most countries right wing, and we're not talking like far right wing, but most countries like right wing are left, right? Like for a lot of countries, like the talking points and the things that they're looking for, you see in our centrist or our left, right? So I think it's it's like, depending where you are in the world, that conversation changes.
In terms of the Second Amendment, like I understand the issues it can cause, but I think the benefits far outweigh the issue. I think the benefits of it far outweigh the downsides of it, provided you have a healthy society.
Yeah.
If you don't have a healthy society, then you got fucking issues.
No.
But then if you don't have it and you have an unhealthy society, then you're still just as fucked. So I think having freedom of speech and having the ability to be the check to the government's power is fine.
Yeah.
Like I'm all for it. I think responsible gun ownership, like being, because my dad's from the States, I'm obviously get citizenship because of citizen born abroad status.
Yeah.
So like,
you're a Yankee.
I am.
You're a Yankee. You gonna be one of us right here in this conversation.
When I plan to go to the United States, and if I live in the United States, I am without a doubt purchasing a handgun. Period.
Yeah.
I think purchasing a firearm and training, properly using and being properly trained in the use of it is is fundamentally a good thing, more than it is a bad thing. I think uneducated use of firearms, treating them like not like treating them the way they're meant to be treated, and being responsible with them, perfect is a good thing. But I think, where am I going with this? Like, but at the same time, here I don't feel the need to own a firearm. Like, at least not where I live and the situation I live in. But in the United States, with the way things are, sure, like I'd be a fool not to. Like, I feel like it would be, it's upsides and not downsides. Um, it's better to have and not need than need and not have, so to speak. Um, and the problem with gun control is it goes after legal gun ownership. Like, it's yeah, like I feel like just leave it. Like, that's what makes, like, every country has their appeal. Like, I live in New Zealand and we have our laws and our rules, and that's what the appeal to being in New Zealand is. It's why my mum came back when she was pregnant with me. She said it was better. She felt it was better to raise a kid in New Zealand than it was in the United States, and I probably agree with her on that. But at the same time, the things that drew her to the United States in her 20s are the same things that would draw me to the United States now. As it's like the freedoms that you have. Like, with freedom comes res- responsibility as a society to use those freedoms properly and use them morally and justly. And I think removing them because people undermine, spread hateful ideas or become active shooters is it's not good, because that's what makes, like, those things are what sets the United States apart from every other country in the world, right? It's the ideal of individual rights. And as far as documentation and legal documentation to support individual rights, the United States is pretty fucking up there in the world of, like, free individual liberties countries,
Yeah,
provided people don't let them get undermined
right.
or
Well,
get
like,
convinced,
yeah, you
or
could.
or you if you get convinced to give up your freedoms, you're a fucking idiot. Like, that's you. You were the
No,
idiot who got fooled, who gave them up.
well,
Um,
I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this. On in terms of that, you're right, because, like, for instance, you can protest our country and you're not, well, so easily widespread, because during certain protests, things like in Russia actually have happened. People have been grabbed off the streets and thrown in jail and whatnot. But it's a little more under the rug. But
yeah,
my biggest thing is, Plowboy says, in chat, Second Amendment is there to control a corrupt government. Well, you have a corrupt government. If a police officer lies and is corrupt, what is, like, the rule of society and the Constitution is you could use that gun against them, a corrupt police officer. But we will never do that. So what is, to me, and this is the intelligent argument here, is if we're not actually going to ever exercise, and especially the people that are most vocal about Second Amendment, like we saw Black Lives Matter, and we see police officers going truly against the United States Constitution. They kill someone without giving them due process. That is a grievous violation of the United States Constitution. The Second Amendment is basically built to defend that. You will never see anyone that is so stark defender of the U.S. Of a 2A person will never do that. So what's the point of having it? What is the point? And that's my thing, is what it's actually meant for is happening right in front of you, but you'll never do it.
Okay.
So that's the counterpart of that.
And all that I'm going to say simply is, because you don't have the stomach to eat meat doesn't mean, just because you're a vegan and you don't want to eat meat doesn't mean that steaks should stop being sold, and people shouldn't be allowed to have steaks because you don't have the stomach for it. And I think getting people empowering the people back again to have their individual accountability and individual take pride in their individual liberty, and we as a people understand that we are meant to be the ones with the power and not the government, and actually have the fucking balls to stand up to it and use that Second Amendment for what it's used for, what it's for, and rather than being spineless, loudmouth fuckwits. Like, that's the big difference. Like, I think we will give up our guns because we don't have the balls to use them, rather than saying grow a pair of fucking balls. Like, that's my thoughts on that argument.
Yeah, and the problem is the Constitution, like anything in life, they treat it like a sport team, right? They treat it like they don't, right? It's never meant to. It only works if you believe in all of it, right? And you look at like the things that Snowden and other people like Chelsea Manning have exposed there is no Fourth Amendment. There is no due process, which means the whole and
Chelsea Manning's a whole kettle of fish.
Right,
like I personally what Chelsea did was right, but she did it in the fucking most fucked up wrong way possible. Like,
I'm just saying,
Snowden curated what he leaked to only damage the people that he was intending to damage. Chelsea dumped everything,
right, and it cost
of people, it cost so much. Like fucking informants and things like that in fucking Iraq and Afghanistan, their families were killed and shit. As a result of that information going public, it was like there were things that you needed to release, like the footage of those Reuters reporters and that Apache, but she did it in the fucking most wrong way possible.
My point is, you have the U.S. government, like the Patriot Act is unconstitutional.
Oh, fuck yeah. Fuck
right?
The Patriot Act.
Right. But so that my argument is, so you already have a government operating under several presidencies that is not actually following the United States Constitution by any standard. Like if all of us were at a round table, if I was on a round table with our founding fathers and people that were extremely stark 2A people, right? If I had like the people who are like, we need it to defend our country and our liberties, and I had the founding fathers there, they'd be like, well, why aren't you doing anything against this?
Yep.
But those are the exact people that defend and say that there's no, like, they're the ones that won't say that there's a problem. And I'm not saying all of them. This is how generalizations work, and I'm on Twitch and I understand that. But there is a large cohort of those people that will never admit that there's a problem there, that it's not against the U.S. Constitution. And my biggest complaint with Kavanaugh was this guy.
He wrote that shit.
It's his name on the bottom, right? Like, we talk about coups, like Trump coups. Everyone looks to January 6th, which, in my opinion, was a coup.
And what about the Crimes Act as well?
Yeah, right.
Well, who's currently sitting in the fucking suit authored that fucking bill?
But what about the Crimes Act and even Biden's personal stance on the Patriot Act? That there is a proper check and balance to him, which is the Supreme Court. And my biggest problem is, if I were to wake up one day with lots of money, resources, and I wanted to make my stamp in life and say, I'm going to make sure that the Patriot Act was unconstitutional.
I wouldn't call January, was it January 6th? I wouldn't call that a coup.
Either
I would
way.
call that civil unrest. I wouldn't call that a fucking coup. A coup would be tanks rolling up from North Carolina into fucking Washington. That's a coup.
Well, again, you had probably the people that could have done that, but there's a lot of people that would have fought that. Kind of your argument on launching the nuke. But my thing is, the realest coup that happened under Trump was Kavanaugh. And the right defended Kavanaugh. People in America defended Kavanaugh. A lot of people that believe in 2A defended Kavanaugh. How can you believe in the United States Constitution with all of your heart, mind, and soul and put your whole personality behind it and say that taking away your fundamental freedoms of property, search, and what the government can do, and you're just like, no, this guy's okay. And that's now a guy like,
That was the lesser of. It was the same deal. It was the lesser of two evils. They were like, we can support this guy. They were like, the way they see it. I'm not saying I agree with it because I don't. I personally couldn't give.
Right.
As much as I
You're
should
not in
care
this
about
country.
who's in
Hey,
the
you're
Supreme
not
Court,
in
I'm not in
America.
the
Yeah,
country.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's not an issue for me. But from a strategic standpoint, looking at it completely strategically from their standpoint, they go, we have the option to, while Trump's still in, because it was unknown how long Trump was going to be in office with how much vitriol the other side was going after him. We have the option of getting in this guy who's definitely not going to undermine the Second Amendment in its current state with what we have with its already undermined state, but it's not going to get eroded any further with this guy making up a Supreme Court majority. Or we can relinquish it, and we may very well then have Supreme Courts that continues to back other things. So it's like it's from a fundamental point, he should never have been able to sit in that seat in the first place. But like they did it because it was like it's a lesser of two.
Yeah,
two
but that's
evils.
that's the coup. That is why that is the coup. That is why it's a coup. And that's my whole point, that anybody that actually believes in what they say and believes in the Constitution and believes you have freedoms, you actually don't. You are lying to yourself, and you're lying about everything, because the reality is you're comfortable with that, right? And that's what's funny is, to this day I bring up, well, Kavanaugh was a mistake. And I've said this to family members and things, and they're like, well, because of that girl, like they assume it goes back to the sexual assault trial, those arguments. When in reality, I'm like, no, it's because his name is on the front page of the Patriot Act, and the Patriot Act is grossly unconstitutional.
Yeah, but the thing is the political left didn't do any favors for that either. Going after him with the sexual assault allegations.
But no one wants to go after a guy for the Patriot Act, because everyone supports the Patriot Act.
No, yeah.
Because the military-industrial... Hey, listen, how much money does the NSA get for all those servers in Utah?
It allows them to just... It allows them control. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this loops back to what I was saying earlier. You've got a bunch of people who don't have the balls to do what's necessary because they can't unify. Why can't they unify? Because we've got a fucking mainstream media system that's turning us against each other to keep us pointed at each other. Because the second the people unify and realize that they've got the fucking Second Amendment and what it's actually for and what's actually happening, then the underlying bed of power, the base of the power gets fucking shaky at that point, and they don't want that. So it's like,
yeah.
People need to switch off from the fucking MSM. Turn off Fox, turn off CNN, turn off MSNBC. Fucking start reading history, looking for parallels, being an individual thinker, and we need to just put aside the bullshit differences in the short term for the betterment of the country in the long term.
Yeah. I'm gonna bring up one.
And I think once people stop fucking fighting with each other, and I think if people were actually properly looking at the way the system is at the moment, I think the ability for people to want to take up arms, because more people would be willing to, because it's like the whole like, people are sheep, right? But like, I think if there's enough people standing up for it and doing something, I think more people will join in. It's like, you just need to get past that threshold of people willing to do it, and not also be sounding like a bunch of fucking lunatics at the same time. Like, we're having a rational discussion here about the system. We're talking about how it's wrong and how it wouldn't be a bad thing. But we're not also talking about fucking lizard people and Pizzagate. It's like, you need a group of people to point these issues out, explain, talk about these individual powers and liberties, and also not sound like a fucking lunatic at the same time, so you can get the people to unify and get behind you, so the system, so that Second Amendment could be exercised again, properly exercised again.
Yeah.
I sound like a fucking lunatic right now.
No. I'm going to bring up like one last point, because I know we've been talking for a while and we probably should wrap, but Solomon in chat said not to be on the police side because ton of shit goes down. Ton of shit they do is never supposed to go down the way it does People don't help when they don't listen. And like, if you didn't know anything wrong, they have to let you go and take it from there. And I'm going to tell you that is the most incorrect statement I've ever seen on Twitch, because police can legally lie to you. Police have been recorded with body cam footage planting drugs on people. Police will do illegal things and their body cam just somehow turns off. There is a laundry list of things in America where police intervention and policing happen. The evidence is right there. Rodney King. Evidence is right there. And they're protected by the system. They're protected by the system.
Because they're the hand of the system.
Right. And
they're the hand of the system.
Right. Why are you going to, and that's my whole thing. It's designed to protect them. And the other piece to that is it doesn't help when people don't listen. If you have a gun to your head, very few people in life have had a gun to your head. You are not rational. And there are things that cops do, like pushing enough pressure on you to where you cannot breathe. You cannot breathe. Cops have killed people by not letting them breathe. They cannot breathe. You are going to not listen. Your fight or flight is going to try to do what you can to actually live. So what you're saying does not make any sense, because if a cop should not be putting you in a hold or doing something to where you cannot breathe in the first place, and you are then trying to talk to them, you're trying to get out of a situation, or you have a gun to your head and you are frantic. That is not a fair thing to do. When this is a person that is supposed to protect you, to protect your community, who has been specifically trained and supposed to be a fair person that is upholding the law. Detectives can legally lie to you. They can legally lie to you. They can get they'll tell you an absolute lie. You can say something and then they can use that against you. And even if at the time because you're under extreme stress, you could have been up for 24 hours, 30 hours. They'll fuck with you. You'll say something as you're kind of sleep deprived, or they'll tell you, say this or do this and we'll get you out, whatever it is. And again, a lot of people that the criminal justice system goes after are poor, uneducated people. They're poor, uneducated people. They're freaking out that their kids at home, no one is watching them. They're freaking out about work the next day because it's the one job that they finally got and they've been trying to get for years that actually is paying their bills. And how are they going to talk to them? So they're doing everything they can to survive. And that's who it feeds off of. So someone that comes from a place of privilege, which could just be education and knowing that they don't have to talk. The
most important, there was a video that I was suggested on YouTube, and that's when you're talking about education, there are sources of education that are so freely available now on the internet. There was a video that I was linked from I believe it was the Regent School of Law. It was suggested, and it was like a 45-minute seminar called "Why You Never Talk to the Police," and they had a fucking police officer. Police officer was the one giving the bloody thing, and he's like, Why? He's like, you never talk to the police. And they broke it down. They even broke it down into game theory. Right. They were like, what do you get? What do you stand to gain from talking to the police? Oh, they might let you off. No, it's like, what do you stand to gain for? What do you stand to lose from not talking? Nothing. You stand to lose nothing. And you stand to lose everything by talking. It's like you don't talk to the police. Period.
And that's where how can you trust? Like, how can you have any confidence in the system when that is someone who is a cop telling you that? But they're not trying to.
I tell my kids whenever police officers go up for misconduct hearings, they don't talk. They get their lawyer. Yeah. They say nothing because they know how the system works.
Right. And that's my point: is the system protects the rich. It protects the educated, the wealthy, and the privileged, and it feeds off of, and especially since the war on drugs, especially because, and you should look at labor laws and the economy and life basically between Jim Crow laws and the war on drugs, what happened in America. But ever since the war on drugs, this has become an extreme problem, right? This is an extreme problem. And to say that people should listen to the cops or should do X, Y, or Z thing, imagine you're telling the truth. The body cam footage on 3 different police officers were turned off. They all said you had drugs on you. It goes to a jury. All of that jury is picked in a wealthy, privileged neighborhood where a cop would never lie to them. They would never lie to us. They're the police officers. Someone broke into my car and they came and helped me out.
Do you have auto fucking timeouts on links?
I might actually, yeah.
I was just gonna link that video in chat for the context for those who might be
I should be able to. If you just you could even Slack it to me and I can post it in there. But we talked a lot.
It's an old video.
Yeah,
it's an old video.
But that's just my point of like, we're again, because of communication, we are able to talk to each other and we're actually able to find out about other people's life, because police officers in my neighborhood, and because I'm half white, half Chinese, I never really got picked on, have been moderately helpful and never really picked on me, and never really caused an issue per se. But that's not the case for everyone. That's not everyone's life story, and that's not everyone's neighborhood. And I think as more as we see, if you didn't, I think there's an HBO special on like the Baltimore police. There's actually a book, and I think there's a book, lots of books, but during the HIV pandemic, the Baltimore police weaponized HIV to put it
target
among
drug users
and targeted, and they were black people. They targeted black people to African Americans in Baltimore.
Heroin addicts the African American community was disproportionately affected more percentage wise than the white community. So by
the whole
indirectly
system,
targeting needles and HIV, it was indirectly targeting the black communities. Yeah,
but what they did with those individuals, where they put them, right? Like systematically, everything involved with those individuals. It was a coordinated effort, and it was a weaponized effort. And, bro, the Philly police bombed a neighborhood. Yeah. I listen, there's a laundry list of things we can get in here, but to say
let's not even get started about the fucking FBI.
Yeah. But
just not.
Oh yeah. And that's why we talked a little bit. I said a little bit of, if you're free speech with protest, people don't realize that the FBI did target people who protest. Like protesters are targeted, and doesn't even go back to
is the direct arm of the fucking White House for controlling the people and doing all the fucked up shit that they.
We won't
even
bring up Black Panther. Power. We won't, but like even with Black Lives Matter, like there were people that were grabbed off the street when they went to go protest, right? Because there's the argument of Russia's so bad they can't even protest. America was a little more coy with it. They weren't just really with cameras rolling, grabbing people, or the news cameras.
They would if there were cameras. They could get away with it. Right. They fucking would.
Right. Well, the media is not going to show that. But if you watch social media or other footage, like
like the Russian media, just like RT wasn't showing it. But the reality of the situation is the fucking FBI. If they had the same, if they were let, if the people of the United States continue to let the government do what they're doing for as long as for an extended period of time, it will get to the point where they don't give a shit that the FBI is on mainstream fucking news outlets overseas, snatching motherfuckers off the street and pulling out fucking APCs to drive in the front walls of houses and shit.
Yeah.
Like it will get to that point. Like it will get to that point. So it's like, as a people, you need to put your fucking foot down.
Yeah. But
period.
This is my, and again, this just to wrap it up, right? I know we went through a lot of journeys here, but when it comes to police and it comes to law enforcement, and I think especially as it comes to our freedoms and the U.S. Constitution, we have very serious problems. And one of the biggest problems is, like I said, there's a lot of people that only believe in one or two parts of the Constitution. It's the only things they care about. And meanwhile, America is getting robbed, not blind. We're only getting robbed blind because we're stupid.
Because you're distracted.
Yeah. We're just letting it. But
you've been intentionally educated to be stupid to the not stupid.
hyper focused. We'll say we've been educated to be hyper focused on like one
I would say
thing.
I'd say you've been undereducated in the parts where you would give you the eye to see what's happening.
That's fair.
You've been educated in the other parts perfectly fine, but in the parts of the critical thinking elements and looking at things like that, and looking at, because how often is the American education system talking about America? That's one thing my mum said she noticed when she went over there was, here we're educated about the world. When we're educated about the world, we're educated about the world as a whole and all facets of it and all political systems. Whereas the United States, she said, was very heavily, she noticed that everyone's education, their view of the world was the United States. Their view of the world was not the world. And it almost seemed like they were educated that way from the ground up to be that way.
Yeah, it's a form of nationalism.
Yeah,
that's never gone bad in the world, right? Nationalism, that's always a good thing, right? Yeah. What could go wrong being a nationalist, right? Right, guys. And for anyone that doesn't understand what I'm saying, is being a Nazi is a nationalist. That is, they were nationalists. They put their country so much that lots of people died that did not need to, and some of the world's worst horrors happened. I mean,
so were fascists and socialists.
Yeah,
Fascists were entirely nationalistic.
Yeah.
Nazis were fucking nationalists, but they believed the nations were not defined by borders but by race. The socialists were the same thing as the fucking Nazis, except they defined it by class instead of by race,
right?
Or country or border. So it's like it's all the same shit.
Yeah.
It's just different.
It's just repackaged. Yeah, it's repackaged. Right.
It's how you differentiate between one another. It's always it's a caste system, and it's like an us and them, but it's a different us and them, and what you are defining as your nation, so to speak.
Yeah, but thanks for taking some time, Cheekster. We went long. This is really fucking long. I know.
Sorry, I didn't mean to stretch it out.
Dude,
as much.
I'm sorry for taking up your time. I think you and I always have a good time talking about stuff.
We always have these fucking discussions in chat, and we can never get it out in long form.
Yeah,
because it's always fucking
we're all playing a game, and I know. Yeah. So thanks for coming on. I would say, in short, there's a lot of injustices that happen all across the world. In your own neighborhood, it's happening to someone, and to be aware and to be kind to each other on that.
Be aware, do well by your fellow man. Don't let anyone rule over you. Like let it be, if it's symbiotic, so to speak. You work for your employer. Your employer benefits
they own you. Come on, they own you. Come on, dude. Yeah, RTJ, look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar, dude. Think about that. Think about that. But that's talking about your boss. That's talking about your salary right there. That's talking about all the news media and everything.
Don't let the government and the media rule you. Whenever you can make the government accountable to the people, let it be. And it's like, even with your employer, work for your employer. Like, you benefit your employer with your services. Like, know your worth. Like, all of my jobs in the past, I've never gone in with a subservient mentality. I've always gone in with I am me. This is what I can offer. Do you want this? And if they want this, you can. It's like a give take. They give me the work and the pay, and I give them my worth. And it's a symbiotic thing. And it's like, government should be the same, and do well by your fellow man. And just, be your own person. Be an individual. Don't be subservient to anyone. Only yourself. That's probably the final statement that I would say to sum up this whole conversation.
Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. All right. We're going to wrap up the podcast. Thanks again, Cheekster, for coming on. I'm sure we'll have to do it again. We'll come up with some other topics, because I think you and I
fuck yeah. That's why I said we wanted bullet points, because we could literally ramble about this forever. That's why when you're like, that's what I was asking you. I was like, are we going to have any sort of structure or shit?
I've never structured these. I've never structured these cocks. Like, when Dom came on, we talked a lot about foreign policy and his time serving. And same thing when Jess came on. I talked a lot about her time in serving and her experience. And I don't like to create an agenda, but the next time we come on, we'll see what's happening in the world. We can pick some specific topics.
Fuck, even if
and do that.
even if I fuck with that, and then it gives us a time frame as well because we've gone 4
I know,
hours.
and the worst part is like we could just keep
we've
going.
gone
I
4
know,
hours and we're
That's-
still going in circles
dude.
about this whole fucking
I
thing.
know. Shit's
And
fucked. Be better. Be kind to each other.
it's like some of us it's like bullet points like games, politics,
Yeah.
Twitch bullshit, or just any other personal crap cut off, and that way it's like fucking time frame organized, and you could even if you wanted to upload it to YouTube, it wouldn't require editing left, right, and fucking center to be able to fit
Thanks so
into
much for that Twitch
an
Prime. I
acceptable
really
window.
appreciate it. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this. Well, Cheekster,
Anyway,
it was an
I won't
absolute
hold you up.
blast. Yeah, we're good. Thanks for coming on, and look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar.